Okay, greetings, brothers and sisters. Friday, January 31st. Last night I saw a little tiny owl. It was an eastern screech owl. I'll show you the video I have. I got a video of it. So I was walking my dogs. I always walk the dogs probably around 10, 11 o'clock at night. And I look up in this tree next to our garage, and um, there's a bird there. And it's about the size of a robin, kind of small. And I'm like looking at its shape, and it's kind of a little bit thicker than an average bird. So I go up because it's just sitting there. It's not flying or moving. And most birds have, it's so dark out. And I realized, oh, that looks like a little owl. And I saw a very similar owl next to our chicken coop. We have an old chicken coop. And I saw its silhouette. I also saw a very big owl recently, maybe about 4 or 5 months ago. I saw the little owl about a year ago, like last winter, and then this owl here. But this owl was so close, I was like 8 feet away, and I could see it. As I got closer, it was looking at me. Of course, I had the flashlight on it, so that wasn't great for it. But it just wouldn't fly away. It was just right there. I was able to get a little video of it. My wife had gone to bed early because she had something to do early today. And so I went in there. I wasn't sure if she was totally asleep, but I kind of woke her up, but she wanted to see it anyway. She came out, it was gone. But I had the video. So I'm going to show the video here.
It's a little owl right there. Little tiny owl.
So you can see how pumped up I am, how excited I am, because, animal stuff is like seeing animals and whatever it might be. And the natural environment, coming across animals is like one of my favorite things. And owls, I've seen the owls that I've seen. That's the three that I've seen in our yard recently. So this is the past year. There's a connection between owls and alien activity. And I'm going to read the Druid or Animal Oracle at the end of this thing, which I'll explain what that is. But, when I do that. And in the Native American tradition, they're supposed to be, I don't know, bad luck or something. But oftentimes people see owls and then they see aliens and then what owls represent. But owls are hard to see because they could be right there and you won't notice them. They don't move. They're silent flyers. So I've seen 5 owls that in the wild. And so the 3 I mentioned, once when my wife and I were on vacation, and some woman with obviously mental disabilities was walking, and we were walking, and she came up and said, "You want to see an owl?" And we were like, "Sure." She was about probably in her 20s and obviously had some, mental, whatever it is, some what people would call a handicap. Nice girl. And she showed us an owl, and we were like, "Oh, that's cool. How'd you see that?" So she had the ability to do that. And then when I was in New Mexico working at Los Alamos, where the national lab is, it was a weird place. I've described that before. And they have this, it's built on what they call mesas. They're mountains that have a flat top. And they built this lab there, and there was a place called White Rock where I also worked at this place. It was below, White Rock is below the mesa. But anyways, I was driving down the mountain, and this giant owl flew out, and it seemed like it was 10 feet. Like the wingspan was like 10, 15 feet. I mean, huge. And the owl just went over my windshield, bigger than my windshield. It was huge. It looked like a ghost. And I'd never seen anything like. I was like, that bird was like something beyond what I consider. I mean, that's how I remembered it. One time I was driving home, and the moon was so big, it was like 10 times the size of a regular moon. So I don't know what the view was there or what kind of mystical shit is out there. But anyways, I've had these experiences with owls and recently, and this one I came very close to. So I'm going to play this song for you. So somebody had posted this on the internet. There's a little cute one. This bird's about 6 to 9 inches big. The one I saw was probably 6, 7 inches. Very small. Like I said, about the size of a robin, but fatter. Really kind of haunting song. It is, you can't see it here, but the owl has horns. Another one, somebody has a little pet there. Cute little bird. I'm going to learn more about them. Okay, so there have been a number of developments, things that have happened even just tonight. I'll explain all that in a second. Let me read the animal druid animal oracle about the owl. So years ago, I went into um, counseling. My ex-girlfriend found a counselor near us. She has a master's level. She had an MSW, master's in social work, but also she was a channeler, which turned out interesting, because of all the stuff. She's the one who told me about Saj Mark. She didn't like it. She did it for a while and quit. And she had a brother-in-law who did animal guides, and she did some kind of weekend seminar, and it was kind of bogus. The guy wasn't Native American, but I was aware of this idea that these animal spirits come in to guide you. It's a Native American principle, but also the Druids and other cultures around the world. You'd cross paths with an animal, or you'd have a dream or a vision with an animal, and these animals had characteristics, and it was somehow guiding you. All animals have specific things they do well. Like, for example, the hawk is something that, sees its prey, in terms of clarity of thought or sight or whatever. And so somebody gave my ex, I think her brother gave her this Druid Animal Oracle book. And we used to do it from time to time. I really like it because I'm an animal person. My first goal, I wanted to be a naturalist like this guy, Marlon Perkins, Mutual of Omaha's Wild Kingdom show. It was a show that was on every Sunday night, and I watched it all the time. And I, would go to the library, and we had a set of encyclopedias, and I'd read about my favorite animals, and I wanted to, be an explorer and these things, travel to different places. We had these two topographical maps, one of India and one of Africa. And I used to sit on them. I was like 6, 7, 8 years old. I mean, they're big. They're probably 4 feet, they're 4 feet plastic, maps with protruding mountains and things. And I learned about where the animals were in these places, and I like look at them and trace them out and things. My dad said he was going to take me on safari when I was old enough, but he was lying because he needed to take Dramamine when he and my grandfather went deep sea fishing. When the three of us went deep sea fishing, because he got seasickness and car sickness, and I think he didn't do well in planes either. And he was just not athletic or the kind of person who would survive a safari. But he promised, he had this manipulative way of promising me, and I'm sure my siblings, things that he knew by the time it happened, I would have outgrown this phase, right? But anyways, it was something that I really like the animals. And that's why I get so excited when I saw the owl. And there's been more owl stuff I want to talk about here that I just remembered. So let me, I have to put the microphone on my chest here. So to read, I have to put the microphone on my chest, and it changes the whole thing because there's vibrations there. But it's called the owl. It's the word, I think, in Gaelic, which I'm not going to even try to pronounce. And there's 3 characteristics: detachment, wisdom, and change. Those are things that the owl is supposed to bring in. And there's these cards, and you draw these cards. It's like tarot cards, but not anything like it, but just in terms of the cards themselves. And again, I haven't done this in years because I'm not focused on spirituality to learn about my material life. Like, that's a phase that I've left in the past, but I'm still interested in these things. And this owl came in. These owls have been very present. So let me just read this, and then I'll talk a little bit more about that. The card shows a tawny owl in an oak tree covered in ivy. A full moon shines between the winter bare branches of the trees. Hung on the trees are votive offerings of the Kalich. Kalich, that's the word. It's and of the Celtic head and the spiral of death and rebirth. The owl, the Kalich Otachi, that's not, again, I can't pronounce it, teaches us the wisdom of turning a disadvantage into an advantage. For most birds, the coming of darkness renders it impossible for them to feed. But the owl's exceptional hearing enables it to pick out and swoop on unsuspecting prey during the night. Twilight has been described as owl-light, and going for a quiet walk in the woods at the shimmering time of the twilight is an excellent way of developing a sensibility to the other world and the inner soul of nature. You may feel drawn to the study of esoteric lore or clairvoyancy. Working with the owl as your ally will help you do this. So that's the kind of writing it has. And then if you draw the card upside down, in reverse, this card may indicate that you need to be wary of withdrawing too much from the world. An inability to detach and discerning is an asset unless it becomes a defense against being fully alive with all the vulnerabilities that this entails. Perhaps this is not such a need for secrecy or holding. Perhaps there is not such a need for secrecy or holding back. The owl can signal a time of change, of initiation, of new beginnings. It can portend of the death of one thing, but also the birth of another. An old Sussex, Duchess of Sucksticks, the Duchess of Sucksticks, an old Sussex saying, when owls swoop at the night, expect a fair morrow. Accept a bright dawn, and it will surely come. And then it has a long write-up I'm not going to read called The Tradition of the Owl. This thing is called the Druid Animal Oracle. Beautiful pictures and kind of interesting. I enjoyed using it back when I did it, but like I said, I've kind of moved on from it. So what happened was my wife had to go to the hospital. A relative was having a procedure, a minor thing, but with bigger implications. And she had to go to bed early last night. She got up really early and left early. And so that was the owl thing. And then she came home and was a little tired, and she said, let's watch TV, because sometimes she'll take a little nap. And then I was going to, I was working this video, but I'm already ahead of the game, so I said, sure. I had a little bit of a headache. And, so she eventually fell asleep, and I came in here to do some work on the video. And I did the initial part of the stuff with the owl stuff that, I just, before this voiceover and the reading of the Druid Oracle, I had done all those things. And I found the call of the owl. And I remember that we've had a number of owls here that have been singing, they've been calling at night. So, and I've talked about this in recent videos, like 4 months ago. So we had some owls in the trees. I couldn't see them, but I could hear them. And they were either in our yard or outside our yard. There's trees surrounding various, we live in farmland. And there was owls that were calling back and forth across our yard. And then sometimes we'd hear them by the window, really loud. I'd open the window and we'd sleep with the window open, which usually what we don't do, but I was doing this in the summer because I heard the owls and I want to hear it. And sometimes we'd wake up, my wife and I we'd be like, can you hear that? And she'd be like, yeah. And we were hearing to this owl call. And it was a couple different kinds of owls. And so there's the owls that I've seen, and then there's been a lot of owl activity, more owl activity than my entire life, like quite a bit more. And my wife had saw a video or heard something about, how owls are always present when UFOs are there, and then all these other things, the things that owls are supposed to be about. They're very, different birds. And so I've been into them and aware of them now for a while, and then I saw the owl last night. And so when I came in to do the video stuff, my wife woke up and texted me and said she was ready. So we went back and we're watching the show called The Outer Range. The Outer Range, we're watching season 2 on Amazon. And there's going to be a small detail I share, a spoiler alert if you haven't seen this show. Kind of interesting show. And, they're doing all these cowboy shows now because of Yellowstone. Things are focusing on Wyoming, and this show is supposed to be in Montana. And there is this giant hole that takes people from different periods of time. A hole in this guy's pasture that if you jump in the hole, you end up coming out on the other side at a different time period in the same place. And Josh Brolin plays the lead character, and he, as a young boy, he comes back. He comes into the future. He grew up in the the 1900s, something like this. So, anyways, the hole has these granular kind of whatever it is, these things that people are putting in their mouths, and they have visions and they hallucinate and they have these experiences. And there's various people have had access to the hole in the second season, and the show starts off with this brother, his brother, the villains, and the older brother knows his younger brother's taking some of this stuff, and he gets some of the granules, and he takes some, and he's having this visions, and he's sitting in front of. They have this beautiful house, and I've talked about this house with my wife. It's got ponderosa pines, and it has these. It's a log cabin, but it's just amazing house, right? With big giant polished ponderosa pine, logs that are quite almost 2 feet wide. They're big in diameter, and it's a magnificent house. And they have this fireplace, and they have all these stuffed owls, and the owls start talking to the guy, like the owls are talking to him because he's having this vision. And then in this episode, so I go back out. My wife wakes up. I go back out, and I've started this owl thing. And the father finds out some bad news. He's kind of the villain. He's a little bit crazy, and he lights all the owls on fire. So right after I did that, he lights all the owls on fire, and he burns down this amazing house. And I was just talking with my wife about how great the house is, right? So of course there's the fires, the fire elements that's going on now. L.A. just burned all the fires in L.A. and things like that, which whatever that is. But in the Native American tradition, we watched this one show that talked about like don't ever look at an owl, and there's a stuffed owl something, and owls represent like bringing death and destruction, bringing destruction it was. But when something dies, something else begins, and I'm definitely going through a transformational process now. And tomorrow starts the gathering for the second master of the Sajmark systemology, and I've just put videos up. By the time you hear this video, the gathering will already be starting, and there's always cleaning going on and things like this. So I thought I'd say all that. There's not really much to say in terms of anything conclusive, because that's how these things work. But there's something going on in my life and involves owls. And so, well, let's get into the other stuff here. Okay, today is Friday, January 31st. I got a bunch of stuff to get to the Cash Patel thing. But and that's why I cover a little bit of the plane crash, just talk about that. And so, yeah, there's all that stuff. I just want to add a little bit to my earlier introduction. I was talking about going through something and getting some like information or news or whatever. I don't know how to characterize it. And, it was something I wanted to say when I was talking about it. Yes, in my last video, I think, at the end of my last video. It's the kind of thing that would possibly break me had it not been maybe the right timing. And, just the way everything kind of transpired. Like, there are things that you can get in life that are like knockout blows. And you don't necessarily die or commit suicide, but you just like check out like for the rest of your life. There's short-term knockout blows. There are things that happen that, just stun you for a while. And it takes you a while to process. And, maybe you're not quite the same. There are things that take the zest out of your life. Sometimes it's a physical illness. Sometimes it's just, bad news. And, things are, you're when you're younger, you're more easily, you can recover more easily. When you're older, you have more wisdom and more tolerance, and life's beat the shit out of you. So so there's, there's different times in your life that being young is important, because young people, like they study like kids during war, as opposed to adults during war, like civilians who are in a war-torn country, and the kids recover from or anything, not just war. It was like a death in the family and things. Kids are developing so much in their various capacities that they recover from things like that grief. And maybe some of it gets buried because they don't know how to properly process it. And sometimes you just go into denial, or you aren't able to process information because of all these factors. You have your own coping mechanisms, but there are times things sting so much. The wind gets taken out of your sail, and when I went through the beginning of the divorce process, and that was just 10 years ago now, and so much of my energy was put into the family and having an intergenerational family farm. I was in my 50s, and having to reinvent life, uh, not only for myself, but, for my kids who, we had one future that was being planned and was being sabotaged and, by my ex, and had no chance of success. And then kind of realizing that. And in the tumultuous time that it was, my mom died and the spiritual master of the system died in 2014 and beginning of 2015. That my mom's death wasn't some big, I knew that was coming, but there was just lots of things going on. And then the Kash Patel debacle, right? So the guy that's called Dodgy took over the Sajmark system and turned it into this heartfulness wannabe cult failure. Like, it's nothing worse than failing at a cult. But that was like really like unthinkable, and a system that I relied on. And so, that whole thing. But I was able to do it. Like, and I remarried, and, the YouTube channel took off in different ways, and, things were, whatever. There was just a reinventing of my life. My kids, all did what they were going to do. And so, but it was a hard thing. Like, it was hard. Sometimes you just don't have the energy to, like, reinvent yourself, or, you can absorb something, but then, creating a new life. Like, sometimes your old life ends and you have to recreate a new one. And as you get older, that's harder and harder, right? It's just, relationships are hard, and it's hard to find compatible people, compatible spouse as you get older, because there's just so many things that are now situated in your life where you live, and, you're blending families, and, all those types of things. Like, that's a hard thing to do. It's something that, relationships take a lot of energy and investing in, whatever it is. And so it's like, it's better for young people who are more adaptable, and you get less adaptable when you get older. You're set in your ways and things. But anyway, so I recently got some news, information that just, would be a knockout blow. There are things that you hear, or you experience, and they're traumatic in one way or another, or they're a shock to your system, and you can't stop thinking about them. Like, it's just, this. It's like like you lost a limb, or you had some kind of accident, and you no longer have all the things you used to have physically. That's like an easy kind of thing to understand, where people are like, my God, I can't own my hand anymore, on my arm or something, or I'm paralyzed, or, something like that, right? And, there's things like that happen where you get some information, or something happens to you, and you're like, every day it's a new realization of the implications of the thing, right? And you want to stop thinking about it, but you like can't, and it keeps on coming back up, and it just, it's you wake up going, oh my God, this really happened. Like, you're unconscious of it when you go to sleep, and you wake up and you're like, oh yeah, that's my new reality. That it wasn't a dream. That actually, like, now I have to process and deal with these things. And like I said, there's things that just can make people check out. And like with everything that's going to go down in the system, there'll be a lot of people who just can't deal. They'll curl up in the fetal position, and, maybe again won't be suicidal, but it'll be like that, where people just, it's like their soul leaves their body, and they're only just, they're just not present anymore. And I think we've all experienced maybe some of those times. I know this happened late in the life of the third master of the Sajmark system, Charji. He was 2005, and he died right before 2015. He died December 2014. So it was around 9 years, 9.5 years or something before he died. And he had devoted so much of his time and effort into building the organization, and doing it with, he had a certain level of character qualities and integrity and all these things. And some of the senior preceptors in the mission that were there in Chennai, one guy in particular, who came and confronted him and accused him of, they had all these mission properties that were collective properties that belonged to the organization, and people had donated money to build them and things, and their time and their effort. And Charji had, put out the most effort. And they accused him of putting them all in his son's name, and that he was personally taking the properties. And Charji was so, like, disheartened, so like upset that his integrity would be questioned. Like he just checked out. Like he just he was he was getting these whispers of the brighter world messages where his master Babaji had passed away in 1983. So this was 10 years, 12 years after that. And it gave him these messages through this French woman. And he was like, you got to snap out of it. Like, you got to just put this behind you. But he just, like, was, people go into, like, a catatonic state where something's so fucking painful they can't deal with it, right? Even someone like that. You see this with married couples where, after years of marriage, one of them dies and then shortly after the other one dies because it's like without, they just can't, life isn't really worth living. There's a partnership there and these kind of things. So a lot of these things, it's also has to do with timing. And so, the fact that I've moved on from my, family and there's just been one disappointing thing, the previous family with my kids and everything, um, it's just been a bummer. Like it's just all been, given what I thought would end up happening. This Master Charji was, he gave this one talk where he talked about birth control. And he said that in the way the world is now, highly developed spiritual souls don't have good landing spots. Because rich people don't have money, and oftentimes they don't have a spiritual orientation. Educated rich people, people are either educated or rich or both. They're not really spiritual, and there's just not that many of them. And they're often, they don't have the greatest family for a saint to grow up in. And in poor families, you don't have the nutrition and the, the brain development, and things like this. Like some of you see the poor people in India. There's just not that level of a higher level of consciousness, right? And so there's very few spiritual people that have good, environments for a higher developed soul to come into, right? And that, there should be just this openness where you don't practice birth control and you just allow these higher developed souls, and you create an environment and an open invitation for these higher developed souls to come into. And my ex and I both believed in this, and we had 4 kids in 4 years, and we thought the kids would all become, better, at least I did, better practitioners of the system, the Sajmark system. It also said these kids were choosing to be born in the system. And that turned out to be pretty much not true because, and maybe it was, and just the kids rebel in America, but there was all these kids that went to these gatherings and none of them ended up doing the meditation. And, they're, I always thought my kids would be, better than me. And that's what every kind of parent hopes for. And, when they started doing the Sajmark system, I noticed that they were better and they were benefiting from it. They all did it when they were young for a little bit and they grew up with it. And now, none of them want any part of it. I mean, like they want the opposite. Like they hate it probably, So, and that's been a major disappointment and everything that goes along with it. But lucky for me that in terms of all these things, the disappointment of the heartfulness debacle with Daji, Fraji, and being able to do the gratefulness meditation, and then remarrying and these things, and just it worked out that I had enough energy and effort to create a new situation and just absorb the old one. But there are these things that are just they just take the wind out of your sails or whatever. And I've learned to kind of deal with them. And there's just a lot of these things that are going to be happening. Like just stuff is going to be coming out. And we have my wife has a relative that's having health issues, the end of life stuff, and so like we have a lot of things that are kind of going on like that. But anyways, I just thought I would say some things about this because I feel like a lot of people are going to be going through difficult times because of just the nature of things. And then as the collapse of the system happens and, you're looking at depopulation and, all the health stuff that's happened and all the, there was a depopulation agenda and, whatever system collapse and systemic collapse and things that go along with it. You have to reinvent yourself and you have to accept loss of lifestyle, loss of, possibly family members and just, the truth coming out too, like things that were buried and things and all this stuff. and all that stuff is very prevalent. Anyways, let's get into the other things here. So I just want to read one comment here in a second, but I want to talk about the fires and I want to talk about all of this stuff. There's been a lot of things that have happened recently in terms of this, plane crash. All these boats running into bridges, infrastructure being taken down, the hurricanes that wiped out infrastructure and roads that still haven't been repaired yet, things like this, right? And then you remember the thing that happened where those refineries got hacked and we didn't have gas in certain parts of the country. And so it seems like we're at war and they won't tell us. And the drone stuff, right? And there's hacking going on. And hacking of systems, any number of these systems. We were able to do some of these things, knock out electrical grids and things. And so, I would assume, Trump's ridiculous reveal about the drones. I mean, him coming out and saying he's going to be more, transparent and he's going to release all this information. But when things get released and they've been deballed in some way, they're not really news store worthy. That means he's not releasing the full data. He's just pretending to do it because he's got to, play this role or whatever, that he's some kind of a truther or something. And so, I would assume if these things have any relevance or have any connection, all these events, the drones and these various things that have happened, plane crashes and, ships hitting bridges, and there are somehow computer glitches or whatever that's happening, that there's hacking going on. And it could be private hackers that want money, extorting the governments around the world. This is something that's been a thing that's been happening. Or it's a war, right? It's something that's being done by the Chinese or the Russians or something. Remember, there's this big movie on Netflix with Julia Roberts where hacking created a apocalypse in America, where everything was hacked and everything, broke down. And so this was some intentional thing, right? And there's some reference that it was the government that did it to the people itself, that it was self-inflicted. So, it's not uncommon for movies to predict things that happen in the near future. And planes going down in the most protected airspace in the world over the Potomac River, which is, central to all those areas, right? They could have those planes, and they could have, whatever. They could have hit the, the White House, for example. I mean, they're not that far from that. And so all these things are, relevant. Like if that's something that's, not an accident, like, if there's some malevolent intent and things are controlled in some way, some kind of hacking, then that's, taking something to like a next level of a threat to the, American politicians, right? If you could hack things and actually, take out the president or whatever it is, right, through, some sort of, whatever they would use to make that happen, remote control planes or whatever it is, right? Drone warfare, all these things. So, this is a possibility. I'm just throwing it out there. And to go with that, before you get into the Kash Patel thing, I got an interesting comment to address here. Let me find it here. I got to make it bigger. So this is the two-faced Trump's nightmare and $1 trillion AI. It's a 7. I gotta go fix that. I put a 7 instead of an and sign. A capital 7 is an and sign. So if you see a 7, that means I meant to say and. I didn't hold the shift button down or something. Let me find the comment again here. I wouldn't fix it. Here we go. And so the person says, I enjoy your videos and find your takes reasonable and rational, but lack a certain level of critical thinking. Here we go, right? So this is, a bannable offense. On one hand, you say they're all in it together, presidents, politicians, and bankers. Yet on the other hand, you seemingly contradict it by saying they're letting Trump screw himself over, or that he's not going to do a good job because he's not a good businessman, or Biden did a bad job because he's senile. If everyone's in it together, that would imply that it's all basically a show, which it is, by the way, and would make their achievements or disgraces part of the show. For instance, is how the Democrats didn't call out Trump for clearly the fake attempt, and how neither side calls out 800-pound elephant in the room with a small hat. If it's missing something, I apologize. I would like to understand your position. I feel like the comment's unnecessary because I've explained this over and over again. My feeling about these things. There's always levels or layers for this thing. I started to cover more things from the perspective that it isn't a show because of YouTube's policies and rules, but also because people in the truth community, many of them are black and white thinkers who don't have the ability for abstract thought and are just binary in their way of thinking. And they just can't help it. Like, this is the problem with the cubies and the flat earthers and people like that. There's a rigidity there, but it plagues everybody, and including very particularly in the truth community, where people need to feel like they know something is concrete, and it's never going to be concrete because you're dealing with deception, and deception is never concrete, and there's self-deception involved in every person. We have our own particular lens that we see the world through. We have our preferences. We have the people we root for, or the whatever people that more appeal to us. We have people that we'd more like to see get hurt or punished or get consequenced, and we have everything. We have we have our own things, and each one of these peoples has their things as well. And so I call it a show because it's a show. There's many factors. Like, I can say NBA, NFL, and all major sports are rigged, but they're not rigged as bad as professional wrestling. They're not as scripted, and professional wrestling isn't scripted either as much as people think. There's some improvisation. They have some things, and some of it they just know what to do, right? But in the script, people buy into their roles. We've experienced this with actors who, the first guy who played Superman, and the number of people have played James Bond or Superman, end up thinking of themselves as that. I think this happened with the Marvel heroes. They start thinking of themselves as that character and think of themselves as a superhero or some villain or whatever. People buy into their roles. And, this is well documented by the Stanford experiment. It was about what's called the Stockholm Syndrome. The Stanford experiment is, you guys mostly know about it, but there was Stanford University had the psychological department, did an experiment where they turned some floors of one of their buildings into a prison. And the prison guards and the prison inmates and the psychologists themselves all bought into it after 6 days. So much so that one of the professors had a guest, one of his colleagues, a friend, come over. And the guy was asking him about the experiment. And he's sitting there going, why am I answering this douche's questions when I have a prison break about to happen? Because there was rumors of a prison break, right? And he was so stressed out by it. This guy was some guy who wasn't involved, was asking him questions. And he was like, get out of my office. I got a prison break to deal with. And that's when he realized the whole thing was fucked, that everybody had bought into it. It only took 6 days for students to think they were prisoners and other students to think they were guards and psychological professors to think they were wardens. And they all, bought into it and were living that as their reality. So there's that. And then there's, of course, like the Skull and Bones, where they have one group of guys who are, the Skull and Bones from Yale, who will be on one side, John Kerry running against George W. Bush. But there's an orchestrated plan, but that doesn't mean these guys don't buy into their roles, and they don't, there's different levels of knowledge. There are different ways of being handled. And I don't think Trump is in on it as much as some of the other people, because he was never a political insider and he likes to think of himself. I mean, he's, I don't think this was all part of some plan that they knew Trump was going to be president, 50 years ago. I don't know. I don't know. But with any of these things, the less people who know about it and the less dialogue, like the thing with the Skull and Bones, they all know the game and what they're supposed to do. They all know the roles they're supposed to play. And, they play them without ever having to be, have secret meetings and have, very limited people who are telling them what to do. These people all have egos. They all have their preferences. They all have their, their self-delusion or whatever. So it's a complex thing. Just like with the sports, there's a game that has to be played. They can't just rig it to where everything's, there has to be a game. You can see the difference between a legitimate game or like a game that you would see on a movie. where it's manipulated, the plays and things, and everything is dramatized. They can't do that kind of, they can't have all the players in the NFL given a script and not expect that shit to leak, or people who, eventually are going to have head injuries, and they have real injuries, like you see real hits happening and real things. So like, there's a game being played. It's just that the outcome is fixed to whatever extent. It only takes one bad call to fix a game in most cases. I mean, the referees are key to all the things, but it's also rigging it financially, where some teams get, I mean, they rig the NBA lottery, so some teams get better players. There's a whole thing. There's all these things that are in play, right? It's just not everything's scripted and everybody's in on it. It's a big act. It's not like that. Like, it can't be like that. Like, there has to be, it would be so fake that people would be able to see through it, right? And I'll get into this with the Patel thing, the guy, Cash Patel. How everyone's on one side, and the Dems are on one side, and the Republicans are on the other. It's just kind of ridiculous, right? Like, we don't know. Like, we do know that they couldn't call bullshit on Trump's fake assassinations, because that would put it, that would be a conspiracy theory by the Democrats. If they did that, all this other stuff, the sheeple would turn on them, right? Because, all of it, right? They just couldn't do that. Like, they all have to go along with these things because they know it's part of the game. I mean, there's that element of it, right? Another example of this is when they have intelligence officers, right? They have intelligence officers who go undercover. There were guys who went into these fringe organizations and got married to one of the other people and had kids. And they were embedded in these things for like 9 fucking years. They had kids. They have like biological kids with one of these people they're spying on. I mean, there's things like that happen. People go so deep undercover and they start believing that they're that person. And they go into it. They have to go into it because they have to be authentic. So, there's all these factors involved with all this stuff. And one of the things I do here is I don't pretend to know. And I cover this with different levels. I cover it like I cover the official story because none of it really means anything to me. Like, I'll look at it, I'm watching a show, and so I'm also critiquing the show and how well they pull things off. But I don't know how much Trump knows. Nobody does. I mean, people who know. Like, if you're privy to the access to the information and the exchanges, we don't know how much Trump is being handled, and we don't know any of these things. So that's how I cover it, and it's unique to my channel because, like, I don't need to pretend to know that I know exactly what's going on. I just could read patterns and see the stuff and the way that they do things. But there's also another factor, and this is also unique to my channel, that, I think it's unique. I don't know how maybe other people do as well. I don't watch other truthers, but, hopefully other people do it. There's a divine element, and I've talked about this significantly. There's the element of the overall divine plan, which is scripted, to whatever extent. The events that play out. Like, sometimes the thoughts you have are coming from an etheric being. It could be something that's demonic. It could be something that's a higher developed soul, depending on what's happening with you and your role to play. But the things that unfold are divinely orchestrated. And most of the inventions, most of the technological leaps and things, like these great inventors, Tesla wasn't one. I think it happened with Einstein. And all these great books like Lord of the Rings or any number of books, they're channeled. There is a connection to etheric beings. And so there is a handling and managing from etheric level where things play out, where oftentimes you think you're having your own thoughts or you're doing your own things, and stuff is being like downloaded into your system. And, your compulsions and your samskaras and the way that you act is all directed on a divine level. And so sometimes a higher developed soul incarnates as a supervillain, a saint. There's a part of the in the Hindu tradition, there is the Vishnu soul that incarnated as Krishna and Rama, and then other people that have been lost in history. And the soul was talking to like another soul that they're in this etheric realm, and the Vishnu soul said to one of its devoted souls that work with him, work for him, you can incarnate 3 times as my enemy or 10 times as my friend. And the soul said, I only want to go down there 3 times, so I'll be your enemy. And the third time was in the Mahabharata. with this character called Shishupal who was insulting Krishna, and because Shishupal's mom was a devotee of Krishna, Krishna said, I'll allow this guy to insult me 100 times. And there's this famous scene from the TV show and the book where Shishupal comes in and Krishna says, today's your day, Shishupal, because he was on 97 insults. And he comes in and he starts insulting Krishna like 3 more times. And Krishna pulls out this disc, this like weapon that he had, and he just cuts the guy's head off and liberated him because he was this soul that was, Vishnu's companion, one of his group of souls, right? And that was it. Like getting killed by the master of the system, the divine being like this was, would give you liberation. And so there's the spiritual aspect as well. There's part of a plan. God has a plan. Either there's no plan and there's no God, or there's God and there's a plan. Everything's orchestrated. Everything's happening for various reasons that we can't comprehend because we're limited to this life's view of it. And we don't have an overall view of what has to happen, what the plan has to go through. The dynamic between good and evil, that, the forces of light and darkness that battle it out here for whatever reason, and, divine things that come out of miseries, divine miseries is divine blessings. So there's all these things at play. And it's impossible for a person, even the highest developed spiritual person, to remove themselves from their earthly existence and see the big picture without, some distorted view of reality based on who they are as a human being and their egos and these things, and read these things. So, I don't even try. I know that all these things are in play, and I cover the subject matter on different levels. Sometimes I cover it as a divine plan. Sometimes I cover it as a scripted event. Sometimes I cover it as like the way that the mainstream media story it. I just cover it the way it's being presented as a show. So I do it on different levels because it's a sophisticated, abstract, whatever show that's going on here, presentation. And, everything's illusionary on planet Earth, like Maya. We look up and we see colors, and colors are, like if the leaves on the trees, they absorb every part of the light except for green, which they reject green. And so the leaves look green. So everything that is illusionary here on planet Earth. So I cover it like that. Like I don't, get into some concrete, this is the way it is, or all these things. Because, people want to think they know. And more in the truth community than any other place, I think. I know now. Like I didn't know before when I was a sheeple, but I know now. It's silly. It's too complex. There's too many things going on. But for example, the Democrats and the Republicans both want to win, just like with the sports, sporting events, and they both, buy into their positions to whatever extent. Even if they know it's bullshit, you can't help to do that, right? So they're on Team Democrat, they're on Team Republican, and then it comes down, they lose, and they have to accept that there's, this is what's happening. They can't lose it and disclose what they know about the rigged system. They just have to accept, yeah, that's the way. But they're still working to win. And each player, each person in the drama has different levels of knowledge, and the people behind the scenes, they all play their part, and they're only given the knowledge they need to have, right? And so, it has to be that way because it has to look real. The best acted performances is when the actor believes, they believe that they're the character, and they self-deceive, and they believe that this is really happening. I mean, they get into it, and they can emote and feel things, and sometimes even channel and embody a person, like Jim Carrey claimed to do that with when he played Andy Kaufman, where you get in contact with the soul of the deceased person, and that soul comes in and sort of channels and occupies your body. Like this is, that's the most legitimate performance you could have, right? If that actually happens, or if I think, I know that can happen, so, it's like almost like a form of possession. And we've seen this, like there's certain actors and people who could just go to a different place and they believe. And their sincerity and their belief in their role is what sells it, right? And Trump totally believes in his role. Trump is totally doing what he's doing, right? I think Biden totally believed in his role. And so, of course he was so confused anyway, right? There's other things like that going on. Like mental breakdown, like how do you deal with somebody who's having a mental breakdown and can't, follow directions and things. So, well, they have to be, they have to do what they did with Biden and Reagan. But I look at these things on different levels and present it on different levels, so it's like might be confusing to you, but if you listen to what I say over and over again about it, like there's things I can't say I specifically know how much everybody knows, and then there's the divine factor where everything is scripted in some way or another, and these things are going to unfold. There's a destiny to everything that's going to happen, and that's beyond anybody's ability to do anything about. If there's a divine mandate that things are going to happen, a divine script, which there's a divine plan, then a lot of these things are going to unfold. There's no, the only choice you have is in how you deal with it, how you accept it, with gratitude and love of God, and looking at it as like a blessing, even if it seems like a misery. I mean, that's one of the major teachings of Sajmark's system. And people are able to do that, are able to take huge spiritual leaps and bounds. And so, I'm covering the thing. I mean, I have to cover it like it's real to some extent to make the jokes I make. There's that level, and there's all these other levels that are going on. And so, it's with this attitude that all this is impossible to decipher. Like it's, you drive yourself crazy trying to figure out all the details and who knows what and all these things. There's the overall plan, there's a divine plan, and then there's the whatever these things people think that they're doing, the people who control the system, and then there's all the other moving pieces and things like that. And it's just a big fucking mess. Anyways, let's get into the Cash Patel thing here. Okay, so I just did the owl part at the beginning of the video. I've shot everything else earlier today. Today's Friday, January 31st, and I'll do the rest of the stuff tomorrow. I'm about to ready to make dinner. But responding more to that comment where the person was like, puzzled by how I jump around, or, I'm not locked into any one sort of vision of these things. And, I explained it in detail already, and I've explained it over and over again, and can't constantly explain it in every video because, Jesus Christ, people have to kind of figure it out for themselves, right? But, I have people that come here and watch Trump, or people watch my videos and they're still into Trump. And so, there's people like that occasionally I have to say, just as a sense of obligation, that Trump's a piece of shit, right? That he's not who you think he is. And whether they hear it or not or whatever, that's none of my concern, but I have to say it. And so, I have to go down to that level, beyond the left-right paradigm. And so, I'm all over the place in terms of different viewers watching, and some who have to hear something a certain way, and people who are on different levels of their truth or capabilities. And what I said about the owls earlier in the video, sometimes you don't get a concrete answer, right? There's like something going on, but it's it remains a mystery, and everything that happens on the spiritual realm is always shrouded in, it's because it's not physical reality. Your spiritual reality isn't physical reality. And so you're never going to know about things like God and all these things in your soul the way you know about physical things that are, you can quantify and, qualify, and you can, you can touch and feel and, engage with, and, they're much more tangible. And the other stuff is always going to be shrouded in some sense of mystery and wonder because it's happening on a different plane and level of existence, right? And so, the stuff I present here comes from all those different places, right? It's it's me just, talking about it for whatever, I can't say while I'm on channel 1 right now, and I'm talking to people who believe in, a binary system and are Republicans, and another time I'm talking to spiritual, like different levels of viewership. Like, and everyone should be able to have these types of things. But like, again, there's no concrete answers here because, the only thing that I can say is the system's corrupt and it's going down because it should. And then everything else is just window dressing, right? And some of it's comedy, some of it's just jokes. And, the premise of the joke has to be based in the mainstream narrative. And if it's hard for people to follow, then, they need to just rise up to it because I can't fucking, this is what I do here, right? So it might seem hard to understand because I don't, I'm hard to pin down because, I really don't give a shit about it. And some of it's just, stream of consciousness channeling stuff where I just start talking and stuff comes out and I'm not, I'm not controlling it, just flowing through me or whatever. So all those things, right? So that's what makes this channel, I think, unique in various ways. Anyways, let's get into the other stuff here. Okay, so let's get into this first. Fattest sixth country on the earth concerned new health secretary might do something different. It's a great picture because the guy's got an ass for a belly. Great meme by the Babylonian bee. There's that. And then from the Huffington Post, report near miss at airport 25 hours earlier. FAA staffing not normal. All these things. And then DC plane crash revives concerns about aviation safety and air traffic controller shortages. And then this one here. Fire Aid highlights Lady Gaga closes star-studded LA benefit. If Lady Gaga, who was never, I don't think, that big of a star or whatever, whatever the pop culture is, she's no like Taylor Swift or something, and she's a has-been now, like she's, she do a new original song. She, if she closes it, that means it wasn't star-studded. And this is these people they had: Red Hot Chili Peppers, Katy Perry, No Doubt, Earth, Wind, and Fire. I mean, these are all has-beens, and Earth, Wind, and Fire, and others. If these are your headliners, and you have a band called Earth, Wind, and Fire for a Fire Aid, absolutely hilarious. Okay, there was one thing I wanted to do on the Kennedy hearing that just popped up this morning, where Rand Paul goes off a little bit. I didn't see it yet. Let's watch a little bit of this. But I really want to mostly cover the Cash Patel thing here.
I think the discussion over vaccines is so oversimplified and dumbed down that we never really get to real truths. And it's why people up here are so separated from real people at home. So we talk about hepatitis B. It's a terrible disease. It could lead to liver failure, as the chairman said. But the reason you have distrust from people at home and why they don't believe anything you say, they don't believe government at all, is you're telling my kid to take a hepatitis B vaccine when he's 1 day old. You get it through drug use and sexually transmitted. That's how you get hepatitis B. But you're telling me my kid has to take it at 1 day old. That's not science. And so every person with a bit of common sense, even people who don't resist vaccines, I vaccinated all my kids. I believe vaccines are one of the modern miracles beyond all pale. The Speckled Monster is a great book about the introduction of the smallpox vaccine in 1720 into our country. All miracles. But I'm not a
miracles. It's a miracle. It's a miracle. This guy. It's like that's what you call a miracle.
Size fits all.
Like a miracle would be get rid of all disease and all death, right, or something. Like there's no miracle that involves when Jesus rose, whatever he would put it, when Lazarus rose from the dead because Jesus made that happen. Lazarus still ended up dying. Like Lazarus isn't hanging out somewhere. Lazarus isn't going to live forever. It's kind of a miracle, but not really, right? These things that happen, they're temporary. They're just, they're a short-term fix. And to call something like this a miracle, but anyways.
It's not all or nothing. I chose to wait on my hepatitis B vaccine, and we did it when they went to school. Does that make me an awful person? Does that make me an anti-vaxxer because I questioned the government dictate of whether I do it? And I'm not speaking for anybody else. I'm only speaking for myself. But for goodness sakes, let's have an honest debate about these things. The COVID vaccine. If you ask me my opinion, the reporters run up and down the hall and they say, you still anti-vaccine? No, I'm pro-vaccine. But on the COVID vaccine and on the COVID illness, there was a 1,000-fold or more difference between the elderly and children. If you don't acknowledge that, you're committing malpractice. You're showing your ignorance.
All right. So, I mean, kind of he's there, but he's not, right? Because of all of this. And so let's move on to Kash Patel. But, this, what I'm going to cover most here is how, like everybody on the Democratic side, is one-sided and Republican is another, and it's just getting worse and worse. Where I've seen these things over the years, there's nobody's going to listen to each other. So the decision on who you're voting for has already been told to you, and you know who you're supposed to vote for. And the Republicans who vote against Trump, live in districts where they have a Democratic state, like Susan Collins from Maine, where she's, they're mostly liberal Democrats, but the people are sort of more moderate. And so they can't be she can't be full in on Trump and retain her seat, right? And so she's kind of Republican. And there's all these people who live in, these swing states and live in states that are now going red, these other senators. And so they have to think about voting with Trump, right? Just for their own political careers or whatever. So they're more, there's these people who say they're Democrats, but they're more, more centrist, and occasionally they'll vote with the Republicans. There's a few people, and all these, there's these two Democratic senators, the one from, I think, was Arizona, and one from West Virginia, that was voting against Biden. Remember, they wouldn't go all the time with, with the Democrats, because they lived in mostly red states. And somehow, they had to balance that, right, with their constituents. But everyone else, they're going to vote with their party. And so the whole thing is a charade, right? It's all performative. So let's get into the Kash Patel thing here. So this is the one I saw. I saw the Amy Klobuchar. And, remember how vehement Elizabeth Pocahontas Warren got about, very seldom do I use a Trump nickname, so it's got to be a good one. But how vehement they got, with Kennedy. Like, everybody's very, over the top now. And so Skifty Skift and Kash Patel are natural enemies. Like, as far as I know, Kash Patel did something with law enforcement. I don't really know who he is. And he's gone on a lot of shows and said a lot of crazy shit. And they're bringing all these things up. Every show he's been on. So they comb through it. And they're bringing everything he said up. And he's either denying it or, arguing with it, because he knows the votes are already been cast. Like, no one's going to be swayed by what goes on here. So you just have to get through it. It's almost like, it's not almost like, it's a humiliation type of situation where these guys, like, you can't come back at the people. You can't say, oh, you're, you receive money from Pfizer, or, you're this or that, right? You can't come back at them because of, the way that it's structured. So they get to be real dicks to you, and you have to just, eat it until, like, they vote, and then you're in, and then you can go after them if you're, if you're allowed. Like, if he could go after Skifty Skift and as head of the FBI, like, he could just totally do that. He might, right? So, depending on what he's allowed to do or not, right? So let's see this thing here first.
Senator Schiff.
Mr. Patel, early in this hearing, Senator Durbin asked you about the January 6th choir event.
All this etiquette, I mean, they're not wearing the wigs like in Britain, which is just goofy. But calling him Mr. Patel, he didn't say thank you for your service, but, if he was a military vet, he would have. And Patel's going to call this guy senator. But it's all performative, right? They have all this kind of weird, these rules and bullshit.
Inmates whose song you promoted, and here's what you said. I did not have anything to do with the recording. I did not have anything to do with the recording. Do you stand by that testimony, Mr. Patel?
Senator, what I said was I didn't do the recording.
You said you didn't have anything to do with the recording, which is interesting, because here's what you told Steve Bannon on his podcast.
This is the great thing about podcasts.
So what we thought would be cool is if we captured that audio and then, of course, had the greatest president, President Donald J. Trump, recite the Pledge of Allegiance. Then we went to a studio and recorded it, mastered it, digitized it, and put it out as a song now releasing exclusively on the War Room. We.
Did you just say we? Skifty Skift is the best because he's kind of effeminate and whatever he is going on with his, his orientation. But he tries to be a tough guy, and it doesn't kind of work.
If you had nothing to do with it, Mr. Patel, why did you tell Steve Bannon and all his listeners that you did?
That's why it says we, as you highlighted.
Yeah, and you're part of the we, right? When you say we,
But you see part of the we
includes you, doesn't it, Mr. Patel?
Not in every instance.
Well, that's new. So when you said we, you didn't really mean you. Is that your testimony?
Not unless you have a new definition for the word we.
Oh, okay. I always thought we included the person who pronounced the word, but maybe not. Well, you also said this, Mr. Patel. We were able to capture the recording thanks to their courageous singing, and we were able to take it to a studio. So let me ask you, Mr. Patel, after saying we took it to a studio, did you take it to a studio?
Me personally, no.
After you said that we digitized and recorded it and all that, did you take it to a studio and digitize and record it?
Me personally, no.
Okay, so you were lying to Steve Bannon and his audience. Is that what you're saying?
No, I was using the proverbial we appropriately, as you've
the
identified.
royal we. Oh, I see. And so
What do you mean you see? Like we knew, like either he did this or he didn't. It's like when a fan of the Buffalo Bills says, "Oh, we lost to Kansas City again." Well, did you lose? Like, yeah, well, kind of, because you're a fan, but you weren't on the team, right? So, there's this idea of we the Republicans, we the Trumpers, we the MAGA people, right? We did this. Like, so, I mean, obviously that's what's going on here, unless he had something to do with the recording itself. So, like, it's just silly, right? And using podcasts, I'm not a fan of Cash Patel, I don't know, but I am kind of now because, like, this is great what he's doing, and he's going to do a bunch of outrageous shit if they let him. We'll see. We'll see how this plays out. But these hearings with him are pretty fiery, which is great because of the, being able to cover it like I do here. But, just some of this stuff is just goofy, right? Like they're trying to, there's no, this is only for clips like this and to have your own viral moment. Because he's not going to sway any of the Republicans and the media, and it's going to go the way it's going. It's already pre-decided, so it's like this whole thing is just performative. It's one big performance.
you certainly promoted the hell out of it, though, didn't you?
I don't know what that means, but I promoted the heck out of raising money for families in need.
With promotions on social media and saying you were going to get this to #1 on the billboards, right, Mr. Patel?
I think it did.
Yes, it did. Yes, it did. Isn't that great? People who violently attack police have a #1 song thanks to you, Mr. Patel. That's something to be really proud of. Now,
No.
you've claimed, Mr. Patel, you didn't know about any of these people in the choir. Is that right?
I did not know about the violent offenders, and I did not participate in any of the violence in and
tell
around
me,
January 6th.
Tell me, Mr. Patel, what due diligence did you do to find out who was in the choir before you promoted their beautiful music? These
It's so weak. Like, it's so pathetic. I mean, it's like so, 8th grade. I love this guy's stuff because it just shows you it's all a joke, right? Like, it's a joke when you know that none of this stuff, other than us watching these clips, the clips that Forbes puts a lot of these clips out. They do it. That's the one, whatever reason, that's the one YouTube recommends to me. But, these various clips that now exist on the internet, most of them have to have something like this, some sort of explosive, good performances kind of thing going on, right? Some kind of conflict or whatever it is.
people who assaulted law enforcement. What due diligence did you do?
Senator, I didn't record it myself.
So you did no due diligence before you promoted this song by these violent felons. Is that what you're telling us?
Senator, I did not record that myself.
So you're being considered for director of the FBI. And here you did no diligence to find out whether people...
Due diligence. If diligence is not really, I don't know what it would mean if you did diligence. The term is due diligence, which you just said earlier.
you were associating with now the President of the United States in song were convicted of attacking police officers. Is that who we want running the FBI? I want you to turn around. There are Capitol Police officers behind you. They're guarding us. Take a look at them right now. Turn around.
I'm looking at you. You're talking to me.
No, look at them. I want you to look at them if you can, if you have the courage to look them in the eye.
Do you have the courage to look them in the eye, those police officers? Look at them. Like, fuck you, I don't have to do that. Like, this is the, telling him to look at him, right? Like this whole, he's having this Perry Mason moment in court. It's silly. Like there's not almost nothing that Patel could say that would make him, I mean, he's got to follow some sort of, reasonable behavior that would make the Republicans say we can't vote for him. I mean, that's what this is about. Like the Democrats need some Republicans to vote against him. And so there would have to be something huge that Patel would do that would make the Republicans say, I can't vote for this guy, right? Otherwise, it's already been decided. The handlers and the people and Big Pharma and all these things for Kennedy and all these, their handlers and their advisors, they've already decided what's best for them in terms of these votes. Like I said. So, him saying, go turn around. Go look those police officers in the eye.
Mr. Patel, and tell them you're proud of what you did. Tell them you're proud that you raised money off of people that assaulted their colleagues, that pepper sprayed them, that beat them with poles. Tell them you're
He knows about beating with poles.
proud of what you did, Mr. Patel. They're right there. They're guarding you today. Tell them how proud
They're
you
guarding you right now.
That's an abject lie, and you know it.
How
I've
proud you
never, ever accepted violence against law enforcement. I've worked with these men and women,
didn't
as you
accept
know,
it. You
my entire
glorified
life,
it in song,
and I did
Mr.
not
Patel.
make a single dime out of
It in
it.
song. Well, let me.
How about you ask them if I have their backs, and let's see about that
answer. Let me ask
answer.
you this, Mr. Patel. Let me ask you this. If an FBI director promoted a song,
If an FBI director promoted a song that was heard by a girl, and the girl liked the song, and the girl wanted to meet the FBI director, and the two of them got married, and he busted out in some sort of musical, like he did some sort of like he's in a musical and started singing. Like if a boy loved a girl.
people who sprayed pepper spray in the face of an
We'll
FBI.
go back to that because it's great.
Let
That
me ask you
answer.
this, Mr. Patel. Let me ask you this. If an FBI director promoted a song of people who sprayed pepper spray in the face of an FBI agent, would you say they were fit to be director?
Mr.
Yes
Schiff,
or no? Would they be fit to be director?
I am fit to be the director of the FBI.
If you were the FBI director and you promoted a song with someone who beat an FBI agent with a pole, would you say you were fit to be FBI director?
Mr. Schiff, I am fit to be FBI director based on my 16
And
years
yet
in
you
government
did all these
service.
things, Mr. Patel. You can say, oh, I support law enforcement. I decry violence against law enforcement. You could say all that.
Remember, he was part of the California defund the police part, right? Like all these liberals. It's so like the rearranging of reality, even though the internet exposes, everybody's so, I don't know why the word, I don't know, I don't want to say segregated because it's self-selected, but everybody's so divided in who they listen to. And we see this in the truth community. There's all these different types of truthers. And you have these, individual, so many different people putting out content. And then oftentimes you guys listen to people who are, have different points of view of what's fixed and what's, you listen to people say the Trump assassination was staged, and some people don't, right? And so you listen to people with different points of view, but, within a framework of the whole truther thing, right? Truther narratives. And so everything's so specified that the internet can expose like all this bullshit, but people who want to believe something, want to believe in this guy, people who are fans of him. And you only need a certain amount of fans, a certain amount of audience, that the internet has, created all this information and exposed all these lies, but it hasn't translated into any real change because everyone has their own opinion of what the truth is, right? The truth is so, it's not like a binary situation anymore where you're a right-wing person or left-wing person. It's so fragmented now that they can say stupid shit like this. And even though he'll be called out, the people that are fans of his, the people who voted for him, and the Democrats and CNN and MSNBC will be covering this like it's legitimate, right? And the other guy too, right? The other guy's got his people. And so, like, that's why the bullshit has just gone off the charts.
It's what you did, Mr. Patel, that matters. It's what you did that matters. Well, let me ask you about something else that you did, Mr. Patel. Did you claim that Donald Trump declassified all the documents at Mar-a-Lago? Did you claim that?
In what proceeding?
To the public, ever, did you tell anyone that Donald Trump declassified all the documents at Mar-a-Lago?
So he obviously knows he's going to read a quote that the guy said it, right? Like he obviously has something, or the guy's like has to be in position. Well, because if you go on podcasts and you do a lot of interviews and you do public speaking, you don't know what the fuck you've said, right? Like people quote me all the time in my videos. And I'm like, what are they talking about? I'm like, oh yeah, I said that in the video. And I did the video yesterday. Like people will write something down that I said that they thought was funny or whatever in a comment to a video I just made 2 days ago. And I'm like, well, why'd they write that down? And I'm like, oh yeah, I said that. I guess I said that sometimes, right? Because when you talk all the time and you say things, and you're talking to specific audiences, like he's on these right-wing MAGA podcasts and things, he's going to say things that weren't meant for this hearing, right? But now everything's just out there. And so he's like, saying these things, and Patel's in the position to go, well, I obviously did say it, or you wouldn't be saying this shit, but I don't remember it, and, what context or whatever.
From publicly available information, President Trump issued a declassification order on a variety of materials.
No, I'm just asking you, did you tell the public, did you tell anyone, did you make the claim that Donald Trump had declassified those hundreds of classified documents that were at Mar-a-Lago? Did you make that claim
From
publicly?
my best of my recollection, I said President Trump issued a declassification order to a large number of documents.
Yeah, and were you present when he declassified all the Mar-a-Lago documents?
Senator, I'm not saying he declassified all the Mar-a-Lago documents. I said President Trump declassified a large number of documents, and I would hope this committee and the rest of Congress would want to get those documents to the American people.
Mr. Patel,
Mr. Patel, Mr. Patel, Mr. Patel, Mr. Patel, Mr. Patel. Skifty Skift is like quite the performer.
Or anyone declassified documents, wouldn't you want to know whether making the public would cause sources to be killed? Wouldn't you want to know that before you just declare they're all declassified? Wouldn't that be the responsible thing for a president to do?
It was the responsible thing for us to do. That's why we declassified the Nunes memo.
And did Donald Trump declassify?
And no one died.
And did Donald Trump ever ask any of the agencies who produced those documents whether declassifying them would put...
See, Hillary had her email scandal. And then Joe Biden had the exact same stuff that he did, that Trump did at vice president. His was worse because he could declassify those documents. And he had shit in his garage he didn't even know he had, right? So all this came out. They all were breaking the law. And they all were irresponsible with classified information. And so he's forgetting that, like this whole thing. Like this is, and the Republicans aren't, because the next guy's going to bring up Hunter Biden. Because it goes back and forth. This is a great exchange. What this happens in the next guy. I listened to, this bleeds into the next guy, but I got the whole next guy thing here. And it shows you, they're ignoring things, right? Like if you're a truth seeker and you're a reasonable person, you have to say they all fucked up, like Trump and Hillary and Biden and whoever else. They all engaged in the same behavior. And it's, it's fucked up that they did it. And it's fucked up that we have so much classified material because all that classified material is being withheld from the American people. That they're not telling the American people much of what happens in the world and in government. And they're being lied to all the time. And that's, if it's classified, the media doesn't have access to it. And so the media should be going after it and looking into these things. And they're not because they're all part of this system. They're part of the show, the beast. And so, and if the people did get access to some of this information, they wouldn't be able to handle it because people are dumb fucks and sheeple and emotional and unstable and all these things. So this is the world we live in, that the people that lead you as a government lie to you all the time and withhold information. And if you did have that information, you would handle it poorly. And so, like, this is the mess we have right now in the human system. and then these binary parties that, they hold only once the other side to any kind of accountability, right?
People's lives at risk. Did he ever do that to your knowledge, Kash Patel?
I don't know that he didn't. Do you?
It's Mr. Patel to you.
No, that's the problem, isn't it? That's the problem, isn't it? So let me just ask, Mr. Chairman, if you would, Mr. Patel has said he has no problem. He would support the release of his grand jury testimony in that case. I would ask you, Mr. Chairman, ranking member, to join me in requesting, with Mr. Patel's approval, the release of those grand jury transcripts. And I would also ask Mr. Patel whether you support the release of Volume 2 as it pertains to you of the special counsel's report. Any reference to you in the report, to your truthfulness, will you support the release to this committee of those sections of Volume 2 of special counsel's report?
I support following the law and providing whatever information the law requires.
Well, you said to the Wall Street Journal that you support transparency. Here's your chance, Mr. Patel.
He baited you. He got you. You said you support transparency, and that would be a legitimate get, right? Because the Cash Patel, I think I've heard him say it, wants transparency in the government, but he doesn't want his shit out there, right? That's a legitimate get. Means nothing, right? Because it's just, everything's been pre-decided, right? And, does he support transparency? Is he willing to release all the January 6th hearings and all the stuff with, all the private stuff and conversations about Trump's impeachment, all the things he was involved in? No. He doesn't want transparency either. And Patel can't come back and say, hey, okay, I'll release my stuff if you release yours. Let's just have all of it out there. Let's declassify all of it. You release all the things that you're involved with, and I'll release all the things I've said, and then we'll see what happens. But he can't say that because you can't come back at him, because this is like a humiliation. On one side, it's a humiliation when the Democrats are talking, humiliation ritual, and then when the Republicans are talking, it's about how great he is, which we'll see in a second here.
You support release of that to this committee, yes or no?
Your time's up. Before I call on Senator Tillis, I have letters here from law enforcement groups representing 310,000 officers supporting Mr. Patel's nomination. And they'd be like the Association of Police Organizations, National Police Association, United Federation of Police Officers, Police Benevolent Association, United
Okay, so this is like him being supported by law enforcement, just refutes all the things that Skifty Skiffs was saying. Look at these people, because these people would rather have him in there than somebody else, because, that's what they're saying. Because the Democrats went in for defund the police, but all of a sudden now they care about the police, at least the ones in January 6th. And so, it's this guy just humiliating Skifty Skift, because the Republicans are in charge of this because they have a majority. And let's go to the next guy. So this bled into the next guy, right?
Take a 30-minute recess at the conclusion of Senator Kennedy's questioning.
Okay, so I thought this was the next guy, because when I was listening to this one video, it just went on autoplay and then went into this video. He wasn't the next guy, but it shows you the difference here.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to say for the record that Chairman Grassley is the greatest chairman God ever put breath in. And would somebody please tell Grassley I said that?
Because he's senile.
You've made a lot of people mad, haven't you, Mr. Patel?
Seems so, Senator.
Seems so, Senator. So now this is where they gets praise. It's a weird hot and cold type of thing, right? Which it's doesn't have anything. It doesn't have any merit in the. It has nothing to do with the outcome, right? Like,
you think maybe you made the right people mad?
As my FBI agents, the BRIC agents told me, when
they all told you this?
I was running cases with them across this country and around the world, if you're not ticking off some people, you're not doing your job right.
Boom, tough guy. They all told you that? They all said it like a choir? They all said it once? all those FBI agents. Not one guy said it. They all said it at once, or they all told you independently. They all kept on saying that over and over again, like some kind of cult. Like every time, one of them would come in every day, it would be a different guy or woman that would say that.
My colleague and friend Senator Durbin called you a conspiracy theorist. You remember that?
I do, Senator.
Yeah, it was like 5 minutes ago.
You were instrumental in revealing that the Trump-Russia election collusion hoax was a hoax, weren't you?
Yes, sir. I was a lead investigator.
Boom, I did that shit.
Sounds to me like we need to get some new conspiracy theories because all the old ones turned out to be true.
Boom. Giving you some old Southern wisdom here. It's like Matlock. He's Matlock on the...
Facts matter, Senator.
Yeah.
Facts matter, Senator.
I mean, conspiracy theorists are up something like 37-0.
Kaboom.
You're not saying that everybody at the FBI is bad, are you?
Never said that. I've overwhelmingly said multiple times that 98% of the FBI is courageous, apolitical warriors of justice.
Warriors of justice. That's what the FBI is known for. That's how we all feel about it. That the majority of FBI is warriors of justice and truth and declassified covert operations and psychological operations on the American people. But yeah, they're the warriors of truth and justice. It's just the 2% of deep state. 2% of it's deep state. 98% of it is heavenly beings who are just here to bring about divine justice.
Just need better leadership, especially those who participated in these conspiracies that actually turned out to degrade them.
Who put away the Unabomber?
The FBI.
Boom. They got the Unabomber. Fuck you, the Unabomber.
Who put away Timothy McVeigh and his Stalin's stomach for blood?
Brick agents at the FBI.
Boom. Fuck you, McVeigh.
Who helped investigate Jussie Smollett, who, in an effort...
You're bringing up Jussie Smollett. It's not Jesse, it's Jussie. And, that was such a joke. You're really going to put that up there with McVeigh and the Unabomber? Like, he was reaching for something, right?
Effort of self-aggrandizement set back the fight for minority rights for years.
I think that was local authorities.
It was the
FBI didn't want any part of Jussie.
FBI had opened an investigation, wasn't it?
Eventually, yes, Senator.
There have been or were some bad people at the FBI and the Justice Department, which work hand in glove, weren't there?
Unfortunately, yes, Senator.
Boom. Deep staters. Deep state. This guy looks like a deep state motherfucker right here.
Secretary Clinton's lawyer, a gentleman by the name of Michael Sussman, had a pass to come and go at the FBI building as he wished. Don't you think the American people have a right to know about the details of that?
Not just that, but what a political party was doing with the secure compartmented information facility with direct access to the Federal Bureau of Investigation.
Mr.
Boom.
Hunter Biden cheated on...
Wait, Mr. Who? This is the good part here.
Mr. Hunter Biden...
Hunter Biden, that guy. The great citizen.
Cheated on his income taxes. Didn't pay $1.4 million in income taxes over 4 years.
Boom. Playa. Hunter's a playa. You're a playa hater.
And he filed fraudulent returns. He tried to deduct his hookers as a business expense, for God's sakes.
Well, technically, maybe his hookers were. Like you could he tried to deduct his hookers. Look, Hunter was a playa. Come on. Give some love for Hunter. I mean, that's just ballsy to try to deduct your hookers.
and they hit him with 2 misdemeanors
He impregnated one of those hookers, or at least the stripper.
before there was a public outcry. Don't you think the American people are entitled to know the details of that?
The American people are entitled to a singular form of justice and the details to every public corruption investigation.
You remember Peter Strzok,
I sure do.
one of the lead investigators for Mr. Mueller's?
I remember Strzok. I thought it was stroke. Stroke. You say Strzok, I say stroke. Let's call the whole thing off.
Russian collusion hoax.
Yes, Senator.
Look at this. He's going for it with this.
You remember when the Inspector General, not his colleagues, turned him in? Inspector General found that Mr. Peter Strzok said, quote, sent an email to his girlfriend, quote, just went to a Southern Virginia Walmart. I could smell the Trump support, end quote. Remember that?
Boom. Smells like Team Spirit.
He did that while employed at the FBI while working on that investigation.
No fucking way. He must be deep state.
Do you remember when the IG revealed another email by Mr. Strzok to his girlfriend? Mr. Strzok said, quote, I am riled up. Trump is a fucking idiot, is unable to provide a coherent answer. End of quote. You remember that?
Peter Strzok said that.
Yeah, he did. I remember that too. Boom. It's just good times.
You remember when his girlfriend texted Mr. Strzok, quote, Trump's not ever going to become president, right? Right? And Mr. Strzok replied, no, he won't. We'll stop it.
Boom. Remember that shit? Boom. Deep state right there. Deep fucking state. And both of them were married on a table. They were cheating on their spouses. Remember that shit? And this conversation they had where they were just talking like a couple of people with no, implications that they had a plan to stop it from happening because he ended up getting elected, right?
I do remember their insurance policy.
And then Mr. Strzok testified in front of God and country that never had his political beliefs impacted his work.
Exactly. He's the only person who has political beliefs that works at the FBI. Like Cash Patel's political beliefs haven't impacted his work at all either. Right?
You believe
Deep state, I'm telling you.
in the tooth fairy?
When I was a kid.
Not now? You don't believe in Tooth Fairy now?
You believe Jimmy Hoffa died of natural causes?
He's also not in the end zone of Giant Stadium.
And then Mr. Strzok got fired, and next thing we know, the FBI and the Department of Justice, after he sued, gave him $1.2 million. Don't you think the American people are entitled to know the details of that?
Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely.
Now, I want you to think hard before you answer my next question. Do you believe in the adage that 2 wrongs don't make a right, but they do make it even?
I don't know. I'm not familiar with that adage.
Senator, I think if anyone commits a wrong in government service, the American public deserve to know the absolute secular detail of that corrupt activity.
When reforming the FBI and the Justice Department, 2 wrongs don't make a right, but they do make it even, is the wrong approach, isn't it?
That's
yes,
correct.
it is. Point that finger.
Correct.
And we're going to hold you accountable for that.
I hope you do.
Boom.
Now, there's some good people at the FBI.
Lots.
Yeah, I'm not going to go after just the deep staters and the Democrats loving people and retribution. I'm gonna police the right wing people. I'm gonna police Trump.
And there have been and may still be some bad people there. And you've got to find out who the bad people are and get rid of them in accordance with due process and the rule of law. And then you've got to lift up the good people. Don't go over there and burn that place down.
Don't do it. Just don't do it.
Go over there and make it better. Do you commit to us today that you will do that?
I commit to you.
Fuck you, Senator. I want to burn it down.
Senator, every single day, 24/7, 365, the FBI will be the premier law enforcement agency in the world.
Boom. I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it because that's, the CIA is better than the FBI, right? Like, we all know that. Like, the FBI is like JV to the CIA. I mean, not in terms of integrity, but in terms of, would you rather be, when you watch a movie, the FBI is, sort of bean counters, more, nerdy accountants type people. And CIA is like kick-ass kung fu knowing motherfuckers, right? Like the CIA is sexier than the FBI. And so you can't say that, right? Everyone knows. So the NSA, there's all these secret organizations. Like, what about Mission Impossible people? MIP. MIP is totally better than the FBI. Their missions are impossible, and Tom Cruise somehow makes them possible. And like the FBI isn't. Come on, bro. You're reaching there. Okay, so I want to get back into Cash Patel. Today is is it first today? Yeah, February 1st, Saturday. It's the first day of the gathering, the first master of the Sajmark systemology. And I had a headache yesterday, kind of a pre-gathering thing. I have some more stuff to say about the owls, including this here. And then there's another plane crash. So I'm going to get into all those things. So let's start here. Someone just sent me this morning.
Well, the end of January has a wonderful surprise in store for stargazers. Just by looking up, you'll be able to catch a glimpse of some planets shining brightly in the night sky. So take a look at this. The 6 planets, Venus, Saturn, Jupiter, Mars, Uranus, and Neptune, will be in a straight line. While astronomers say the lineup itself isn't unique, what is seeing so many bright planets all at once. And it's a phenomenon that's known.
Okay, so I saw Mars very significantly, I think the night of that I saw the owl, or the day before, the night before. I was like, man, is that a frickin' spaceship? Because it's bright red. It's the only red thing in the sky. I've been seeing Mars a lot in the last couple of years. It's the planet of war. And so it has significance in the Vedic astrology. I'm not sure about the other one. And when planets align like this, there's always something that goes on. Like they say, whatever, this has astrological consequences, which I'm not aware of. Like I don't, know enough about astrology to say. But I saw not only Mars, but a planet that was blinking. And, I remember there was some UFO guy I used to listen to. And he said all the blinking stars are some sort of like spaceship or something. Because, stars don't blink. I mean, if you wouldn't, the light's coming from so far away. So anyways, but I saw Mars the other day, and this thing with the planets aligning is significant in some ways. And so let me get into the plane crash real quick here. So this is the raw video from Fox 29. I believe this must be in Philadelphia. So there's a plane crash there. We'll see this in a second here. The Ring doorbell. But so there's a fireball. So this guy says got his Ring doorbell thing on. So it looks like a missile's coming in here. So, and I just want to remind people, let me go to a audio thing here. Okay, before I switch over to the voiceover, I didn't watch this whole thing because of YouTube, but there's actually more here. Different angles here. Very pixelated. I mean, imagine that if you were in the city. These people, they're like going to the store or something. They're in a parking lot.
Oh, God.
Here's the other one here I want to show you. Boom, they're going up there. So, okay, I want to go over to a voiceover here. That's enough of that. But I want to say this. So there was a point where you used to be able to see everything on YouTube. And there was a point where it was monetizable as well. But at some point, YouTube decided, because of the pressure from shitty mainstream media and the Democratic Party, that if you showed things that they considered graphic, it could be either community guidelines. Very seldom it was that, but they wouldn't monetize it, which meant that you couldn't report on the news the way that the news reported on the news, right? And that's how bad CNN was getting beaten, that they had to, they had to force this. But of course, it worked poorly for YouTube because people went to the news, went to find their news on YouTube, right? Very few people go find their news by tuning into CNN anymore. When there's a big event, like a huge event, then people might go back to CNN or MSNBC or Fox or whatever, because they're just trained to do that, and they'll get, they have more money and they have more, live cam, whatever it is, reporters and infrastructure to cover such events. And then we take from them, and we use what they're, some of the stuff that they're putting out there, but we don't have the ability to fly everywhere and cover it. Like, there's, in terms of internet news, but for the most part, people don't tune into those, to the CNNs and the MSNBCs anymore because of they suck so bad, the content. But anyways, let's get to the voiceover here. I take everything that I see on TV and the internet, and with the sense of, well, this could be true, right? Like pretty much anything in the world, even the things I see with my own two eyes, because I know that third dimensional reality is not reality. Third dimensional reality is an illusion in itself. Our bodies are an illusion. They're not our genuine souls, right? Our soul self. That was a phone call I got there. It's not our, a reflection of our souls. And so I don't believe anything, like in terms of, it is maybe or not, right? Like some things are maybe closer to the truth, but we're dealing with an illusion here. Like we're in an illusion. Maya, right, from ancient Sanskrit, like this is an illusionary world. It's a reflection of our souls. It's a reflection of divine energy. And it's, manifested into something tangible, something solid that feels real, but it's full of illusionary things. And we have the ability to lie to ourselves, lie to other people. We're deceivers, make up things, believe our own lies, self-deception. And so it's all just, then all the ability of human beings to lie now has reached an all-time high with video and deepfake technology and computers and the internet, and all the things that people are able to create elaborate lies now, right? That are much more, they're things that you can perceive, right? We're illusionary things. Every movie's a lie. Every TV show's a lie. Like all these stories, they're illusionary. They're illusions within the illusion. So, that's why I kind of mock people who claim they know something. Like, the flat earthers are so sure of their thing. It's, and the cubies, those are extreme examples. But you think you know things and you don't. Like, it's just, you kind of know things. It's a best guess. But really, it's more about the information you need. Like, God gives you the information you need. Like, your soul gives you, it's a need-to-know basis, right? Like, going back to this thing with the owl. When you interact with animals, they appear. And, like, all right, I see hawks fairly regularly. Like, we see hawks here. I see sparrows. I see robins. Orioles, I see for a 2-week period, and I'll see them once or twice a year. Orioles, these types of birds. I see mice and rabbits fairly regularly. And so it's hard to be say that this was a special interaction. But some interactions feel different. But something like an owl, it almost has to be, I don't feel like it was a coincidence. It was just some random thing. Like they have to, I go out at night with my dogs, and I walk every day. I go outside, and wherever. When we travel, we usually walk, and so we see quite a bit of wildlife, right? And some interactions just seem different. Like I've seen dolphins, where we see them out, 100 feet from shore. But there are a couple of times, and I've showed video of this, where there was dolphins that were right by the shore, and they were just right there, and like 10, 5 feet away from me, like I could reach down and touch them, things like that, and they were significant. Like we were watching this dolphin, we could hear the thing surfacing and breathing and things, and so with the owls, I go out at night, and sometimes I look up at the stars, like I try to, but a lot of times it's overcast or those chemtrail clouds or whatever the fuck they're doing. You very seldom see a clear night sky. And I look up sometimes into trees and things, but not all the time. Most of the time, just going out. It's cold out or whatever's going on. Trying to get my dogs to go to the bathroom, and then I'm going in, looking out for coyotes. It's like a whole. It's not a. And so for me to see an owl, it's almost like the thing has to display itself. One time I came out, and right by our front door, across from the driveway, is a big tree, a big oak tree. And there's an owl sitting right up there, and I looked right up at it, and it flew away. Big owl. And the other one was by the chicken coop, which I almost never go over there. And that one where I saw it the other night, it was a place where I usually don't go. My dogs went over there, and I went to be with them because I don't have a view of the back area. And it's coyote mating season, so they're more active. And so I went over to be with the dogs, and I looked up and saw the owl. This is what I'm talking about, where like it's like scripted in some way, like it was supposed to happen, these interactions. And not just with animals, but this could be with people and any number of things. We were like, this isn't, this was a significant thing that I'm going to remember and was supposed to mean something to me, right? I was we have this little pond that I built. I've shown video of it recently. It's got a waterfall and a little creek, and there was a time, I've redone the pond a number of times just for water leakage and a bunch of other reasons. And there was a time where there were these dragonfly nymphs. And, dragonflies are voracious predators. My wife had saw something about them at the same time as, let me just finish this thing. So there's these dragonfly nymphs. And I'm watching them. They're in the water with my fish and these tadpoles. There's a lot of tadpoles in there that year. And I look in that pond all the time. Like I spend a good 15, 20 minutes, maybe even up to an hour, staring into this little pond because there's all this activity. We have fish in there, frogs regularly, and then sometimes tadpoles, and then any number of other things that are in there, right? And I've never seen a dragonfly nymph, and there was two of them. And then this was one year, and there's at least two of them in there. And I was watching them, like just watching what their behavior was. Like I just love that kind of stuff, like I was saying. And it was maybe the following year, following summer. So that was like the end of the summer, the nymphs were there. And then the winter, and then in last year, 2024, spring and summer, there was more dragonflies than I've ever seen. I showed some video clips of it, and someone sent me a video clip of all these dragonflies at the ocean. It was the biggest year of dragonflies. I've never seen so many. And they were following me like I was, and I don't know if they were there because sometimes swallows do that, where I'm on the bush hog. It's a big lawnmower to cut brush. And sometimes hawks will follow me. Swallows, because insects are being disturbed, and then they fly up, and the swallows get them. But these dragonflies were flying right next to me. And sometimes when I wasn't even on the bush hog, was just on the tractor, there's dragonflies just flying, like almost following me and surrounding me. Of course, there are so many of them. But I've never seen so many. And it was funny, I saw the nymph for the first time. And then my wife said that, they're the, other than sea turtles that hunt jellyfish, which is the easiest thing to catch in the world, if you can avoid the tentacles, right, the stingers. But dragonflies are second in their kill list in terms of the times they go after something. It's like 99% of the time they get it. Like they're ferocious predators because of their ability to fly and what they do as nymphs also. I mean, you can see the nymphs, it's scary. It almost looks like an alien type creature. Dragonflies themselves, right? And so, these interactions and things that are important, things that are significant, like, when something's, you have your mundane life and your routine and something that happens outside of that routine, right? A lot of times it's just you're checking the box. You're just going through your daily stuff, and then there's things that are significant. And, these plane crashes, the one that happened last night in Philadelphia, it almost looks like a missile. There's another video my wife sent me last night, looked like a missile coming in. It's on fire and whatever. But the one that involved the Black Hawk helicopter in D.C. and these other things that almost they're near misses. You think about the fires. We know about the hack. I said this earlier. All these things that we know about were hacked. And then the boats crashing into bridges. And if they're hacking us right now, there's no one, and that came out. I mean, how many people are going to get on an airplane if you know that there's, they can be used as weapons and the missiles, right, where they can take them down in city areas and things like that. Commercial planes. Like if they, let's say, what if there was 100 that happened in one day, right? And then they couldn't explain it away. I mean, there's 2 in a short period of time. And the thing coming in looks like a missile, right? So, there's things going on right now, and they can't tell you. Like if we are getting hacked, there'd be widespread panic, and it would indicate that we're at war, right? Like this is whatever it is. I mean, if it's independent people doing it, and not even a country, that's even worse because they can't stop that. They can, if people have the ability to hack our infrastructure. You remember from Edward Snowden, there was these reveals in the movie, and then, whatever they were part of his, the movie had documented some of these reveals where they were hacking into people's computer cameras and watching them. Like this Muslim woman was getting undressed and they're watching that. Like it's a, a front because there's a modesty there where this woman, these women are wearing head coverings and things. And they were hacking into these cameras. And so it was like trying to show you the way that they could go around people's, it's the privacy issue. But also they said they could take down the infrastructure or they could turn off the electricity in these cities all over the world. They had the ability to hack into the grid and knock out the electricity if they want. If we could do that to them, they could do that to us, right? There's all these, vulnerabilities, and this is when you depend on computers, and now of course with AI, all these things, it's all possible, which would freak people the fuck out because all the stuff that you depend on can be frozen up or taken out or misused or deceived in some way or controlled and rammed into something or whatever, right? And so this is the world we live in right now. Like it's anything that happens, you have to wonder. Like I always wonder if it's real or not. Like is this just something they're showing me? This thing looks real with the plane that's crashed, these doorbell cams, but could be fake. Like it all could be fake. That's like part of the thing. But the reality of it is, the system that we have is illusionary. The Earth is illusionary, and then the system we have is based in, you misusing. It's a heavy resource system that at any moment can be taken down, right? At any moment can be crashed, and because it's it's not something that's natural. Like what we're doing now with the use of electricity and then all the things that we're using it for, so much of it's unnatural. It's bad for us. It goes against God's will, and it takes a lot of effort to keep the system going. And it takes a lot of suffering in other places in the world for the rich people, America as a country and rich people all over the world, to have the lifestyle that we have. The average income globally is $23,000. So if you're making more than that, you're a rich person. You're above the curve, right? And so in America, the average income is $66,000. So that's 3 times what is globally, right? I'm below that. So in terms of, but but most people are well above the global income of 23,000, right? And so that's with half the world living on $2 a day or less, and a third of the world living on $1 a day or less, right? These, poor, if you see the impoverished masses of people and the suffering that's going on in the extraction of resources, right? And we'll get into that in a bit when I show you this guy from Alaska. Not in this video, I guess next video. I'll talk about that more in that one. We can't use up every little bit of resource now with just, one generation of, 5 generations of people, whatever it is, and use up half the world's resources and all the fresh water aquifers. Like that's just fucked, right? You can't do that. So, all these things have to be, like the taken into consideration, like in terms of the system, because it's not a good system for the majority of people and for the earth. Many people suffer poverty and live horrible lives in toxic conditions, doing shitty jobs. Basically some form of slavery. The earth itself is suffering, and the people who are making the money are rich, are pretty much miserable, whiny, entitled pieces of shit, right? So it's not a good system for anybody. We're disconnected from our soul, and we lie about everything to ourselves and everyone else, right? And so the lies and the illusions that keep the system going, a system that should have collapsed years ago. And so, this is how I feel about the whole thing in terms of, I'm not going to be able to get to the truth because we're in a sea of lies. Like, you don't find the truth by looking into the lies, by staring into the abyss. You find the truth by connecting to God, connecting to the divinity within you, and you realize that everything that you see and need to know is a need to know. It's a need to know basis. The interactions that are important, the things you need to know to make your decisions, to live your life, that's all you need. And that's all we have the capacity to do. We don't have the kind of, storage, the processing power of a computer. There's so much knowledge out there, and we can only retain a fraction of it. But anyways, let's get into the other stuff here. Okay, so I went to eat breakfast this morning, Saturday, February 1st. And Smear Kanish or Velshi, there's one guy in CNN, one guy in MSNBC. I think it was Smear Kanish was interviewing, is it Byron something? He's a Trump supporter. He's a senator, and he's good at making Trump sound like reasonable. It's a guy Trump pointed out during his inauguration, and the guy said, Trump, and then it went back to Smear Kanish after the interview was done, and I went and I did some exercises, like I do that for the TV. Oftentimes I just put on like in the winter I put on a fire, like a fake fire, and there's a YouTube things, and anyways. And so Smear Kanish was saying that these were the three most fascinating congressional hearings he's ever heard. Like, he's watched all three of them. And, the contentious nature and the back and forth, and he's never seen them like this. And then, of course, the plane crash, but Trump is still dominating the news cycle in various ways, even with these things happening, right? Which is, I don't think he was saying that was necessarily a good thing, but talking about the power of Trump to hold an audience. So this is, but these hearings are like off the chart. So I saw this one. This is the first one I saw, Amy Klobuchar and Cash Patel.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Patel, I think that I have great respect for the men and women.
There's this is for both men and women. There is a ratio related to becoming a senator or a Congress, someone in Congress. Like, it's how long you're there and how unfuckable you become. Like, you just turn into these ghouls. I mean, all these people, these senators, they just get worse and worse. Of course, they're aging like everybody else, but they're aging poorly. Like, it's just all the ickiness of Washington, D.C. They turn you into some kind of, it turns you into some, like, worse version of yourself.
The FBI, their mission, fidelity, bravery, integrity. I believe they deserve a director who respects...
So what I'm saying here is, in our country, we're a very superficial country that rewards for being somebody who appeals to you visually, right? Like, everybody they hire, there's a visual aspect. And with the age of TV and now the internet, people want to see people who are, models, right? There was that whole network news, whatever it was called, broadcast news. And, the William Hurt character was considered, better looking than the, whatever that comedian is, that one guy who's in all those movies, whatever his name is. And they were more into having people who were like those models. Remember, there was some model category in the Star Search, the spokesmodel, right? And so in a country that's obsessed with their looks and staying young, and you have these people whose primary job is to be in front of people, either as politicians, as getting elected, as a running for office, and or going on CNN and doing interviews, and then giving these public speeches and doing public appearances. And these senators and Congress people, for the most part, are so ghoulish looking, right? And I mean, I'm not even talking about your physical looks, like just the energy you exude, where there's just this, like it's just depressing, like you're like a monster, you're like some kind of a mutant, right? There's just some icky energy there, like some kind of, I mean, they're just abhorrent, right? Like you see these people every time I tune into these Senate hearings, and I see these people, like many of them I don't hear speak regularly, and they're not good at public speaking either. They're not good at their job. Just Skifty Skift was pretty good at doing. I think he's a trained lawyer. I mean, he's okay. He wasn't great at but and Elizabeth Warren's a teacher, a professor, and she speaks in front of kids all the time. But they're not really good at this. Like you wouldn't cast them if you were doing a movie role, and you were casting senators. You would never cast a real senator, you know, because they suck at it. Like you'd have to be a superstar senator, like Barack Obama. I was talking with my wife about Barack Obama. He grew up with white grandparents and his white mom in Hawaii, which is Hawaii and Alaska and some of these states are, they're part of the United States, but they're different. They're different places. And his grandparents, his grandmother worked for a bank that was run by the CIA. It was like a CIA bank. They had all that CIA stuff there in Hawaii. You remember also from the Snowden thing. And so you've had all these, they have all these connections there. His father, his biological father, wasn't in his life very much, but he was from Africa. His dad was like a diplomat or something. These are high-end people, people who are already in the club. And so they ran this guy as an African-American guy who grew up, in the African-American community, but he grew up in Hawaii with white parents. Then he went to Indonesia and lived there for a while, right? And he was a part of, his family were educators, and the way that he talks, he stole from some other senator, a guy who's not Cory Booker, but somebody's like from New Jersey. You can look it up. There's a guy there that Obama stole his whole cadence and his whole way of talking, right? And so they ran Barack Obama as a African American, but he was, not your typical African American who'd grow up in America, right? Just like Kamala Harris was, her dad was a professor, a Jamaican professor, and her mom was Indian. And so they come in with these people who they try to make just like you, right? People who grew up where you grew up and are like you, and they try to check all these boxes. But these people are all, they're all elitists. There's these bloodlines, right? They're all tied together. They're all, ghoulish and all that stuff.
I believe they deserve a director who respects their work and sacrifices, and they deserve a director who's focused on
Look at her eyes here.
their mission. This is not about bingo cards.
It's not about bingo cards.
Games. This is
Like, look at how her dead eyes. Like, she has the eyes of a corpse. That's not a living person. Her eyes are like dead. Like she's got corpse eyes.
not about revenge. This is about the safety of our country and the people that work in the FBI. And the
Boom.
FBI runs on facts. It
Wait, what did you say?
runs on truth. Truth matters. And without truth, the whole system breaks down.
Okay, so the FBI has covert operations. I was talking about this, I think, in my last video or earlier in this video. There was one of these right-wing kind of groups, and the FBI implanted a guy to be a part of that group, and he married some girl. He was in there for 11 years, and they had kids. I mean, like, they have these assets they run, deceptive people spying on people. They lie to people, psychological operations, disinformation, all these things. And what are you talking about runs on truth? I mean, the whole reason you have these intelligence communities is for spying and lying and manipulating people. I mean, that's what these agencies do, right? What are you talking about? America runs on lies. Like, you're saying truth matters? Like, just... like, nobody believes you. You must be talking to, like, people who are so stupid that they don't know politicians lie all the time, right? Like, it's just silly.
You said that Donald Trump has every right to tell the world that in 2020, 2016, and every other election in between was rigged by our government because they were. Yes or no, did you say that?
I don't have that statement in front of me. But
Okay, that was from August 27th, 2023 Thrive Time show. I'll put it on the record.
So they do all these podcasts, like they're validating podcasts. I actually did this. I already did this, so I have to watch this again. Somehow I lost this clip, which sucks, and so I have to recreate all my jokes and all things I said. And it was like 4 hours ago. So, but I did say about her at this point in the video that she was in this documentary for HBO called Kill Chain. And it was about how they were going to rig the 2020 election. And she thought Trump was going to rig it. And she was, in the documentary talking about, she had sponsored some legislation to stop the rigging of these elections, because they thought Donald Trump was going to find a way to rig it. And the whole documentary was about how Donald Trump was going to rig the 2020 election because electronic voting machines are easily compromised. And they had hackers come into Vegas, or they had some kind of hacker convention in Vegas, and they brought these electronic voting machines, software and hardware to these hackers, and they were all able to hack it in different ways, very easily. And so that was what this HBO documentary was about. And it kind of like lost all sense of, they posted it before the election, but then after the election, it disappeared. They didn't want people to know that Democrats and the establishment was questioning the legitimacy and the not only the legitimacy of these elections or the election ahead of time, but also the equipment they were using. Of course, Hillary Clinton said Russia hacked the 2016 election. All that stuff. And they were fine with that, right? So that shows you the level of how these people are discredited, right? This school here.
These claims made in that statement were rejected by courts, including by Republican judges. Is that correct?
I don't have enough of the facts in front of me to make that assessment.
I will put that statement on the record, but I think everyone in this committee, including the Republican members, knows that these statements were rejected by courts.
So, you can't call out or question the legitimacy of elections because that brings down the whole democracy. And Trump doing that was like considered, whatever that was. And whether he was doing that as a part of a script or he was doing it because he's just a douche, all these things, right? And Trump would have no problem if it was rigged in his favor. In fact, the system's always been rigged in his favor in one way or another, economically and just in life in general, right? But, this is, it's so hard to listen to this stuff because it's so bad.
Courts. You were asked about the police officers in the Capitol who testified in the January 6 hearings, and you accused them of lying. Is that correct or not correct?
I don't think that's accurate.
Okay, Joe Packed Podcast, March 2024.
So again, they're going to legitimize, I know what's coming up with this. They're going to legitimize all these podcasts and shit, right? Like they just go through all these things.
Or we'll put it on the record. I was there. The police officers were heroes that day.
She was there that day when that big day in January 6th. Now, the January 6th people are not heroes, and it's going to come up. The whole song thing's going to come up. I'm going to show you a little bit of the song. Like I said, I already did this. I did this clip already, so I know what's coming. But the whole thing is just a joke. Like, it's just like why it's just so performative, and it must mostly be for really old people who still believe in all this kind of stuff like it's legitimate, and people who just don't have the ability for abstract thought, because most people just I don't know how people could sit through this stuff thinking that it's real, like there's some point to these hearings, right? When the outcome's already predetermined, like they either have the votes or they don't. And unless this guy does something epically bad, I'm going to say this probably throughout this, these ongoing proceedings here. But she's just horrible.
Yes.
Did you post on your personal social media account in May of 2024, January 6th, never an insurrection, cowards in uniforms exposed. They broke the chain of command.
I believe you're referencing a post that was shown in part earlier. I don't have it in front of me.
You posted it, and it was on your account, and we will again put that out there once more as we go on. I don't
Like
want to.
there's so idiosyncratic movements and hand gestures. Like this is supposed to be the cream of the crop. You know, she ran for president when she was in 2020. She beat Joe Biden in the first two primaries. Her, Bernie Sanders, Buttigieg, and somebody else. Joe Biden came in, I think, fourth and fifth in the various primaries. And she was one of the candidates that lasted longer, and Elizabeth Warren. And so those were the candidates that were ahead of Biden in one of the primaries, and then Biden beat Elizabeth Warren in the other, but he was behind her. So she beat Biden in two primaries, but had no money. I mean, she was like, this was going to possibly be a president, right? I mean, they're all fucked up anyway, but I mean, just, you know.
Want to lose any more time on this, but every one of these, there's a record of it, and you haven't answered.
You haven't answered.
You promoted a COVID vaccine reversal or detox supplement. One scientist said, I quote, "None of these substances in any form would minimize side effects from a COVID-19 vaccine." That is
Okay, so you're admitting they have side effects.
preying on innocent people.
Preying on
Did you
innocent
perform
people.
clinical trials before you made that claim?
I'm not a doctor, so no.
But you did
Were you shilling like Alex Jones some supplements?
promote this supplement and told people that it would reverse or mitigate the side effects from COVID vaccine.
Did I give people an opportunity to make an independent choice for what's best for their families? Yes.
You did that
Boom,
last
he did it.
year, correct?
I don't have it in front of me again, Senator.
Mr. Patel, the FBI tackles some of the most complex threats that we face: terrorists, hostile foreign powers, violent gangs, fentanyl, criminal organizations. Your mission, though, has been to go after people. I've
Boom.
looked at it. I've read this stuff. Yes or no? When Trump wins, did you say this? When Trump wins in 2024 and is in power in 2025, we can prosecute them, referring to Justice Department officials for an actual RICO statute violation, for criminally organizing the United States government to break the law to rig presidential elections. Did you say that, yes or no?
Again, Senator, you're reading a partial statement, so I'm unable to fully respond.
Okay.
Boom.
Again, we'll put it on the record. X22
It's on the record, you guys, just so you know. It's going on your record.
report podcast 20. That is from, I'll get you the date, about a year ago.
Will you, when you're going to get the date, put that on the record, a podcast? Like they're legitimizing all these things throughout this whole thing.
One of the names on your list was Bill Barr. Chairman Grassley has called him one of the most capable cabinet officials I've ever been able to vote for. Senator Graham has said, I have nothing.
Bill Barr was a piece of shit, right? Even when he was pro-Trump. I mean, he's a piece of shit his whole time.
Nothing but total respect and admiration for the job done by William Barr as Attorney General of the United States. Is Bill Barr on your list of whatever you want to call them, been referred to as an enemies list? You've called them deep state after serving his country.
Deep state list. He's got a deep state list, right, which is hilarious. It keeps on coming up. I don't know if I'm going to, some of the stuff I might repeat because I don't know what I said about her and what I said in the future, but there was a movie called, there's a book which I read, I think either the whole book or part of the book, and it was called Slaughterhouse-Five. And this guy, he's traveling through time. He ends up in the end of his life with some supermodel being studied by aliens. It's a book by Kurt Vonnegut, who wrote One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. And there's a guy, he's in the war, and the guy, there's a vengeful guy who inevitably kills the main character. And he's like, you're on my list, buddy. And there's another character that was in Stripes named Psycho Francis, who said the same thing. You just made the list, buddy. These people keep these death lists, right?
As the Attorney General of the United States, is he on your list because of a personal vendetta?
Well, it's not whatever we want to call it, Senator. With all due respect, it's not an enemies list. That is a total mischaracterization.
I ask you,
And-
I actually used the words you used for the list, which was deep state, right? That's what you put
It's a deep state list.
at the
It is
top.
a glossary
Against
in
the
the
Attorney
back.
General of the
You
United
know, and I don't know whether I say this later on, but the deep state is such a bogus concept because, it's this idea that there's just some bad apples and the Republican people are the real sincere ones. There's good guys like Trump, and that's just not true. The deep state is everybody. I've said this over and over again. It's a silly list. And when they start saying deep state, I think I say that later, so I'll skip it here.
United States. Is it because of a personal vendetta that he's on the list? You're under oath.
I have no personal.
You're under oath. I'm under oath? Fuck. Wait, I'm under oath? I've been blabbing now for about 25 minutes. No one told me.
Okay, he said about you, you would never be able to command the respect necessary to run the day-to-day operations of the Bureau. That was actually in writing in his book. He had virtually, about you, no experience that would qualify you to serve at the highest level of the world's preeminent law enforcement agency, and that your appointment, as noted by Senator Durbin as Deputy Director to the FBI, would happen over his dead body. Is it
Over his dead body.
yes or no, why you would put him on the list of deep state as a former Attorney General, Trump Attorney General of the United States, because he wouldn't break the law for Donald Trump? Is that why?
Absolutely not.
As you know, he repeatedly told the
So Bill Barr was a piece of shit. Now, Bill Barr, they hated Bill Barr because he carried Trump's water in the beginning. He did a lot of Trump's bidding, but then whatever deal that he got or whatever was told to him, he turned on Trump at the end. He covered up for Hunter Biden, which was clear. That's all. That's everyone knows that. I think everyone does. And he turned on Trump during the election, but he was a piece of shit all along. Look at those dead frickin' eyes, huh? Like that's just not a living person.
president in no uncertain terms that he did not see evidence of fraud that would have affected the outcome of the election. Did you say in February of 2021 that the election stuff was never my job and I stayed out of that stuff?
Again, I don't know what comment you're referring to, but I'm sure you're reading a piece of something.
You said it on Pushback on a podcast.
Is it on Pushback?
True, though, that in December of 2020, you reached out to the Trump acting deputy attorney general and asked him to investigate a conspiracy theory claiming that people in Italy had used military technology and satellites to remotely tamper with voting machines in the U.S. and switch votes for Trump from Trump to Biden.
Boom, you got it right there, Closer, after 3 tries.
Is that true?
What was the date?
That was out of December of 2020.
I was chief of staff to the Department of Defense, so I don't believe that's accurate in any way.
Okay, that came out of testimony before Congress. I will give it to you. Have you referred to the media as the most powerful enemy of the United States that they have ever seen? Is that right?
I think he has, because I've heard that.
Again, you're reading a quote. I take that you're reading it accurately.
CPAC 22324. You said we're going to come after the people in the media who lied about American citizens who helped Joe Biden rig the elections. We're going to come after you whether it's criminally or civilly. Is that something you said?
That's a partial statement of what I said.
Steve Bannon's podcast.
Steve Bannon.
You also said you would put the entire fake news mafia press corps on your list. Is that correct? Is that what you said?
I don't have that in front of me.
Benny Johnson.
In fact, I don't have really anything in front of me. I got a couple of bottles of water here and an eraser. You guys should have provided me with a program or something, and I could be more accurate about what you're saying. I said,
Podcast 82123. You have said that the FBI, including today, you said that they remain utterly corrupt. This is an agency with agents who have taken down terrorists, taken down bank robbers.
Bank robbers? Did they rob bake sales and the FBI got them?
Taken down crime. And you wrote that the FBI has become so thoroughly compromised that it will remain a threat to the people unless drastic measures are taken. Do you know that under Chris Wray's leadership, he took over at a very difficult time.
It was such a tough time.
Know that, appointed by President Trump, that during his tenure, the applications to the FBI has, in fact, tripled. Do you think people would be applying to that agency, like in those numbers, if they thought it was so corrupt?
Well, corrupt criminals would, right? People want to make bank. Most people get jobs. You either you get a career that you love, which is, I don't know what percentage of people love their job. And if not, they find the job that they can work with like their buddies, or, there's some kind of advantage to it. It's considered slave labor. They hate their job, but they do the one they hate the least, right? And people will, think about various things. And people who are corrupt or who want to make money on the side, there's people who like that kind of shit. And if they hear the FBI is corrupt and they can make a little bank and do a little manipulation, then they would totally apply. Like, you're making it sound like all these people are like, the FBI is, these people are just all with good characters, and they're just great people, and they want to just serve their country. Like, it's just silly stuff, right? People who want to get payouts, they want to make money and be on the side and be a respected FBI agent and make bank being corrupt and double dealing. There's people who love that shit, right? And they're like, hey, the FBI is corrupt. Let's go apply.
The American public's trust in it is at 40%. That's an all-time low.
Did you say that the FBI headquarters should be shut down and reopened as a museum of the deep state?
Deep state.
Chairman, are we allowed to go an extra time?
Let's see. You got.
So, like, he's been watching the clock, right? And A.B. Klobuchar gets totally rattled here.
You get a second round. Before I call on Senator Lee.
Could he just answer the question if he said that the FBI headquarters, where they investigate cybercrime and terrorism, should be
You're taking too much time, Nancy.
shut down and opened as a deep state,
Hey, Mr. Chair.
as a museum? Did he say that the headquarters should be shut down?
Mr. Chair.
I deserve an answer to that question.
I
He
guess
is
it's-
asking to be head of the FBI, and he said that their headquarters should be shut down.
Mr. Chair, parliamentary inquiry.
You got anything you want to say, Mr. Patel, before I go
Boom. He's going to shit all over here.
on to Senator Lee?
Simply this. If the best attacks on me are going to be false accusations and grotesque mischaracterizations, the only thing this body is doing is defeating the credibility of the men and women at the FBI. I stood with them here in this country. In every theater of war we have, I was on the ground in service of this nation. And any accusations leveled against me that I would somehow put political bias before the Constitution are grotesquely unfair. And I will have you reminded that I have been endorsed by over 300,000 law enforcement officers
300,000 of them.
to become the next director of the FBI. Let's ask them.
Mr. Chairman, I am quoting his own words from September of 2024. It is his own words. It is not some conspiracy. It is what Mr. Patel actually said.
You should have led with that. That's kind of the bombshell when you shit on the opening line, the headline, right? You buried it.
Himself. Facts matter.
You forget
Facts matter. Facts matter. She doesn't gonna cry.
that you had 3 minutes
Boom.
in the next round to say what you just said.
Okay.
Okay. So this guy, Richard Grassley, this old degenerate ghoul, and
Blumenthal.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman.
this guy's the worst. I mean, he looks like he comes from some post-apocalyptic villain. He was in charge of that. There's a whole push to create emotional intelligence in schools, and it came out of Yale University. And any of that Yale shit is, very suspect. My wife was saying she was listening to I forget the woman's name, but she used to be a frequent guest on Alex Jones when Alex Jones had a good show. And then she has her own podcast. She used to be a part of the Reagan government or one of those Republican governments, right? I'll think of her name later. And she was talking about how Callie and Casey Means shouldn't be trusted because, they reach this sort of superstardom in the truth community. And, I don't know in the truth community if that's the case. That happens to people. I've talked about that before. They take somebody who has some credibility, oftentimes it's a celebrity, and they become a truther, and people elevate them to celebrity status. And they're often, I don't think they're shills. They could be. I mean, they're shills for themselves. They're probably B-list stars or people who are C or D-list stars or whatever. And they, immediately get all this love. And Callie and Casey Means, you shouldn't trust anybody, but they're not going to have an effect on anything, right? Shilling for Trump like they did a little bit with that with Joe Rogan. But Trump is going to win no matter what. Like, it's very clear that they were putting Trump in. Like, this whole thing that happened with Biden and Kamala Harris, I mean, if it isn't part of a plan, then the level of incompetence is so bad. And that, if they either control things or they don't. And if they can't control, if this is all just random shit that's happening and they've lost control and Trump isn't their guy, then we're in deeper trouble than you think. Because, them controlling things is a necessity for the system to keep on going, right? But anyways, these people I was talking about, these ghouls, when you get older, you get old. Like, you get wrinkled. You're not going to be what people consider good looking because people think old people are ugly, right? That's just how we view things. But if you lived your life in the right way, you're not sexually attractive, but you're attractive in a different way because you're connected to God and you're about to die. You have wisdom. You're in the death process, and this is when people have really good grandparents, and you're just admitting love. Like you're over your old personal bullshit. Even people with personality disorders kind of get a little bit better as they get older. Like, they're not as much of a piece of shit. I mean, your anger is gone, your fear, maybe not your fear. Old people are fearful. And there's angry old people. But if you're living right, your fear and anger is dissipated. There's some old people are just fear-based and anger-based, but I'm talking about spiritual people who are connected to God. And you're over your life, you've lived a good life, and you've accepted that you're dying, and you have things that you just want to give to the future generation, your kids and your grandkids and other people. And people just, resonate and want to be around you. And so, yeah, you're physically, falling apart, but your spiritual essence is shining in such a way, and you can see it in somebody's face, right? It's pleasant to look at. An old person who's lived a good life. And they've passed the test of time, and it's who they are when you die is the most important thing. Who you are as an old person, no matter how much you fucked up your life, if you become somebody, of value, you pass through their trials and tribulations and difficulties of your life, you exude this, you sort of radiate this energy, and I've experienced this, certainly with the members of the Sajmark system and the master of the system, but other people, right? You see old people who are just, you want to be around them, right? You want to listen to what they have to say. These senators and politicians, none of those people fit this category. They just get like ickier and ickier as they get older, right?
Welcome, Mr. Patel. Thank you for being here. And thank you for visiting with me in my office at almost
Did you try to touch him, bro? Come on, a minute.
Exactly the moment that you were talking to me. The Department of Justice was firing more than a dozen lawyers who worked with the special counsel, Jack Smith, simply because they were involved in that case. You've committed that the FBI will not be politicized. So here's your first test. Will you commit that you will not tolerate the firing of the FBI agents who worked with the special counsel's office on these investigations?
Senator, I appreciate the time to visit with you.
It is a yes or no answer, and
A yes or no answer. It's a yes or no.
it is your first test.
Senator, every FBI employee will be held to the absolute same standard, and no one will be terminated for case assignments.
And I'm not going to accept that answer because if you
I'm not.
can't
I'm
commit,
just not. I'm just not. I'm not going to do it. It's not the kind of thing I would do. It's not the kind of thing I would accept. It's not. I don't do that kind of thing, and I'm not going to do it here. I've never done it before. I'm not going to do it here just for you, Mr. Patel.
that those FBI agents will be protected from political retribution, we can't accept you as FBI director.
Well, we can't. We can't just can't do it. One thing leads to another, and that thing with things, and we can't do it.
FBI employees will be protected against political retribution.
Those individuals deserve to be protected from Trump retribution.
They do. They totally do. Because you know what? They were part of this investigation against Trump, and now he's being a real dick about it. And we're not going to tolerate that.
That was your first test. You failed it.
You failed. You failed. That's the.
from Trump retribution. That was your first test. You failed it.
By saying all
that
FBI
is
employees should be protected?
That is a test of professional diligence because it is the measure of whether you will stand up and say no to the president if he gives you an unlawful or illegal.
Okay, so this clown, really despicable. So they had this thing called emotional intelligence, and it went through this Yale program. Lady Gaga was involved, and they wanted to get into kids' internal worlds. You know, it was post one of these events that happened in this guy's state. You know, I grew up in Connecticut, and this guy is just a real piece of shit. But like with all the other people, they've already decided who they're going to vote for. You've just failed that test, sir. You failed it. You failed it. That test, a fail. It was a test that I imposed on you, and it was a yes or no answer. And any answer but yes was going to be fail. It's a pass or fail, and yes was the right answer. So you failed that test, sir. You know, sir.
Legal order. Let me turn to the J6 choir. You know who the J6 prison choir is, don't you?
It's been referenced earlier, yes.
And you know about the song.
The song the J6 choir put together. They're a choir now in prison. They sing about prison things and J6 stuff.
That, in fact, you produced, you promoted, and you used to, as you put it, support.
Look, his fucking handshaking down here.
Raise awareness and support for the political prisoners still locked in jail. Those J6 choirs, were they political prisoners?
I don't know everyone.
He's got a big blow up of his tweet.
Went in the J6 choir.
That's what you said.
That's
correct?
Not how I read it, Senator.
Says here, Justice for All by the J Prison Choir and former President Donald Trump. The powerful and moving song raises awareness and support for the political prisoners locked in jail following the January 6th protest in 2001. Boom. It's damn. Look at this guy. He can't even believe he's shocked.
This is your tweet. That's your whole
That's
statement.
your tweet. I got your tweet right here. It's your tweet. This is your tweet. Look at right behind me is a giant tweet. See the giant tweet directly behind my ghoul head? And it's just right there, the giant tweet.
Well,
you won't stand behind your own statement.
You won't stand behind your own tweets, your own tweeters?
Made in tweets, countless of them. As a matter of fact, as you put it to Steve Bannon on his show, then we went into a studio and recorded it, mastered it, digitized it, and put it as a song. Now
put it as a song. We already heard this before, but I want to say it again here.
Releasing it exclusively in the War Room. That was the J6 prison choir song.
And all proceeds were given away to charity to help families.
And you called them political prisoners. Julian Cater. Do you know what he did?
I don't know who that is, Senator.
Do you lick your balls, Senator? Senator, I think he licked your balls, right?
Well, he's one of the J6 prison choir.
He's one of the J6 prison choir. Please follow the conversation, Mr. Patel.
You seem to know more about it than I do.
Identified in a court filing. And you're saying now you don't know who he is? You glorified him and the rest of that choir?
Where's his hand?
He's the one who sprayed U.S. Capitol Police Officer Brian
How's that rooster working for you there?
Sicknick with pepper spray. Officer Sicknick
He pepper sprayed a cop.
died the next day. Cater admitted his violence. He pleaded guilty to assaulting assaulting a political officer.
You mean the police officer? The word's police.
A police officer.
Jesus Christ, bro.
Do you believe that Julian Cater was a political prisoner?
Senator, I'm not familiar with this case. You seem to know a lot more about it than I do. And as I've said repeatedly, I will always utilize my resources to help Americans in need, which is what I was trying to do here. And I've never.
So let's look up the J6 choir. Justice for All featuring Donald J. Trump and J6 Prison Choir official video. Look at they're in prison. Look at that guy. He's wearing fucking orange. He doesn't look good in orange. How do they get together and sing in choir? Like, how do they get access to recording equipment and the rest of it? I mean, like, they don't, they're in prison, right?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America.
Holy shit, this sucks. This guy produced this thing. He was involved in this. These colors don't run. It's just fucking just this bullshit patriotic shit that they put out there. It's only, one-sided patriotism and this old deep state shit. They shouldn't have been up there. Protests suck. They every one of these dopes got gamed into, got played and worked just like Trump did. I mean, as real as this thing is, as real as they are, all the real people here, they got played. You got played. You got fucking, there was no reason to go up there. The whole thing was just a debacle. Trump is their asset. He's been their asset all along. And you're getting played by Trump. You're getting played by whoever's got you into this whole thing in the first place. It's just an absolute joke. And this fake patriotism bullshit. It's just like so icky. Okay, this is Senator Dick Durbin. Do you think the FBI was really planning January 6th? Seems like Dick Durbin thing was the one that kicked it all off. And I'm not going to probably do the Tulsi Gabbard. I might. There's one thing I want to get to her. I pulled up that YouTube recommended. I haven't looked at that yet. I'm not sure if I'm going to include that next, but this is the last of the Cash Patel. And so I took my dogs for a walk. It's a little brisk outside. It's been raining, which is always a good thing for these spiritual gatherings. And I'm walking around our pasture thinking of the name Dick Durbin. Like, I've heard that name a long time ago. I know who this guy is. But, like, Dick Durbin sounds like a gay porn name, right? It's Dick Durbin and Sodomy Joe starring in who don't bend over and pick up the soap. And so, so this is Dick Durbin.
Mr. Patel, I have 3 or 4 things, and I'll try to get through them quickly.
Bet you do, Dick.
First is this. When it comes to the issue of violence in politics, I personally believe it has no place in politics.
You personally believe that, but everyone else thinks it does. So that's where you stand out, Dick.
Whether it's violence against Donald Trump at the Butler County Fairgrounds or violence against Nancy Pelosi's husband in her home. Period.
Okay, so both those were bogus. Those were 2 bogus events. One of it was Nancy Pelosi's more than likely gay lover. That whole thing was weird. And the whole thing with Donald Trump was fake. So come on, bro. We expect more from you, Dick.
And those people who, Proud Boys, whatever the heck they call themselves.
They call themselves the Proud Boys. You don't know their name? You guys say their name more than anybody else. You guys are always talking about the Proud Boys. And so, like, don't say whatever the heck they call themselves. You guys have whole congressional hearing, and you guys prosecuted their leader. You don't know their name by now? And you just said it, right? Whatever they call themselves. I say that, and people say that when you're not sure. Like, it's something like that. It's something like the Proud Boys. But you said exactly what it was, Dick.
Have no place in this country as far as I'm concerned if they espouse violence in any form. Do you agree?
Yes, Senator.
Let the record show we actually agreed on something. Number 2, the reason why we keep asking, which may sound a little silly to the audience here, why are we so concerned about this choir singing a song? What's that got to do with it?
Yeah, that song was sucky and stupid. So why are you concerned about it? It's goofy.
The question is, who are you going to care about? Who are you going to help? Are you going to help those victims of January 6th, the policemen and their families? Are you going to help people who were arrested?
Okay, so is this the first time ever that policemen are considered victims? I mean, you didn't say that when stuff happened with all the stuff that happened with the the BLM riots and all that stuff, Antifa, right? I mean, I guess when cops are shot, but I mean, this is just like you guys in your January 6th, and like nobody gives a shit about it anymore. 5% of Americans said they didn't give a shit about January 6th when they voted in this past election. Like, that's how much that thing has just been played out, right? Like, even Democrats, it was like 5% of Democrats, 3% of overall voters.
For assaulting him. I think the J6 choir looks like a tribute to them, characterizing them as political prisoners and unlucky and just patriotic people who may have gotten out of hand. Do you see the difference?
Excuse me, Senator, I can appreciate the difference, but I think my track record shows which side I fall on.
Well, that's why we keep asking you. What do you do with the money that you get from this music, and who do you give it to? And you've really kind of ducked and dodged and said, I'm not aware of this. I had nothing to do with it.
No, we actually give all the money. Nobody made any money. All proceeds went through a 501c3.
I'm talking about the creation of the musical work.
Yes, all the money, all the profits went to nonviolent offenders' families and other groups in need.
The point I'm getting to is not what happens to the proceeds, but who created this musical masterpiece, who was in on this creation, who they chose to be the members of the choir, and you profess to know nothing about that. Is that true?
I did not have any participation in the recording.
Well, it's going to be difficult to understand how you can disperse the money and have nothing to do with the recording.
Okay, so the way they understand that was what his story is, and I don't know if he's telling the truth because you guys are all lying piece of shit, but his story was that he heard the recording and then he promoted it. And they did something where they generated money, and then he gave the money to families of these people who were prosecuted who were nonviolent offenders. And so that would be as simple an answer as it could be, like I understood it, Dick.
Let me ask you about one of the conspiracy theories, one of the major ones that I've heard you associated with, and that is whether or not the FBI planned January 6th. Why did you say that?
Senator, I appreciate the opportunity to address that. That's not what I said. The entirety of the statement attributes my conclusion based on the public record that the FBI utilized sources in and around January 6th, and the Biden Inspector General confirmed just that.
So it's Cash's Corner, and the date is December I can't read the writing, it's so small here. It looks like it's December.
The FBI had informants, 26 of them there. So that's something. That's not nothing. And who gives a shit at this point? Because no one cares about, like, people that are tired here January 6th. Like, after these hearings, it's over with. I mean, the guys have been released. Trump has done all that shit. Of course, they'll bring that up. But, you know, the American people, it's a losing issue where they don't care about it. And when you talk about things people don't care about, then you lose, you know, I mean, yourself, you lose stuff, right?
2002. And what did the FBI know before January 6th? And you said, what was the FBI doing planning January 6th for a year? Want to send this down to the desk?
Oh, there it is. Put it is. You got a big giant tweet you can put up behind your dick?
Why did you say
nice double chin there. Look at the Dick's double chin. Look at this fucking, what's going on there, Dick?
Get a chance to look at it. Why did you say that?
Why did you say that? Why would you say that?
I think the FBI was really planning January 6th for a year.
Actually, Senator, I'm grateful that you raised this point. You should watch the entirety of the episode. This is the problem with taking snippets. Well, let me inform you then. What it says is it raises an interrogatory asking why government resources were utilized. I've run resources and sources at the FBI. I've run sources overseas. It takes months for source developmental networks.
What resources were utilized a year in advance of planning?
That's the question I'm asking, and the Biden Inspector General report answered that question in the affirmative, that multiple sources were utilized, and I was simply trying to get to that answer.
What the Inspector General came back with was, quote, there is no evidence that the FBI had undercover employees in the various protest crowds or at the Capitol on January 6th.
And there is
no evidence.
There's a huge distinction between undercover employees and sources. I know because I ran them. And anybody in law enforcement knows that too.
So you think the FBI was planning?
You're saying they ran sources like these informants. You're running people. Like you have operatives who aren't FBI agents, and you're running assets, right? And so there's 26 assets there that day, FBI assets. And, you know, just, I mean, who gives a shit? Like, it's just Dick being Dick.
January 6th for months ahead of time?
Once again, that's not what I said.
Yes, well, read your own words. Maybe that's a good starting point.
That was a good starting point, Dick.
Just say one last.
You know, I want to say something about all this because the problem here is you identify one group as evil or more evil, in this case, the Democrats. And so anybody that opposes them is good, or anybody who flirts with the truth community is good. Anybody who says, anything related to your beliefs, right? Our beliefs as truthers or things that are similar to us. And so Trump is a little bit more of a truther than Dick Durbin and Joe Biden. But that doesn't make him a truther. It just makes him somebody who sees that truthers are an asset. He was told to cultivate a relationship with the truth community. He went on Alex Jones. Of course, Alex Jones is a shill, but Steve Bannon told him to do that, or whoever it was, right? One of those guys, it was Steve Bannon, advised Trump to cultivate a relationship with the truthers, and Trump had flirted with things like the Obama birth certificate. He had talked about, vax stuff before, some of these things. He flirted with Kennedy too. But that doesn't mean these guys are on your side. It doesn't mean that they're people that just because people believe, there's lots of people who are good, positive truthers, or they understand the same thing we do. We all have shared beliefs, and they're piece of shit people, right? Or they're just people you wouldn't like. And if you had a relationship with them, in fact, truthers are, for the most part, loners and people who are antisocial, and, we have our issues. And so there's all these, there's all this stuff. But in terms of these politicians, just because the Democrats are a piece of shit doesn't make the Republicans good. Because, that's how you've been trained to think, that there's a binary system and there's good and evil, and that there has to be a good side and there has to be an evil side, and there isn't that, right? Not in politics, not in any of this stuff. These are all evil people. Like, everybody has good and evil in them, right? Everyone, your soul is a potential saint, and your ego is a potential demon, right? Or sinner or whatever. And it's both things. And so everyone has this battle, and some people the battle has long been lost, in terms of their souls. They've gone over the dark side. Once in a while they have a moment where they feel some love, or they feel some compassion, or they have a spiritual moment, a higher moment. But for the most part, they've sold their souls to their egos to the devil, right? They're just, not literally, just that's something they've done within themselves. They've turned themselves over to their egos, and they're no longer concerned about truth or justice and these things, right? There's a lot of people who are wrecked in this way, bankrupt, all these things. And all those politicians, Trump included. And so, it's easy to pick sides in these things. I mean, certainly Cash Patel seems a little bit more on my side and our side, but he's not really. He's just a piece of shit, right? And Dick Durbin. And so it was Catherine Austin Fitts that was the person I was referring to earlier. Things come back around every once in a while. All right, so let me see what else I'm going to cover here. I might just do a little closing voiceover. I'll see how long this video is, and then probably I'll I have a few things to cover in my next video, including the Tulsi Gabbard thing. Okay, so I had to redo that Nancy Klobuchar thing, which sucks. Once in a while I lose a video clip, or it didn't render, it disappears, or some shit like that. And so and this video is almost 3 hours anyway. So I'm just going to wrap it up here. Only spirituality will save this world. It's Paul Romano, definitely reporting for the Apocalypse. And the Ascension, everyone have a blessed day and be grateful.